Is Amy on by chance?
Again?
Is Amy on?
Yeah. Yep, she's a co-host.
Okay, good. Good. Okay, we're going to get started. Welcome to our Steamboat Springs City Council regular meeting number 2026-04 on Tuesday, February 3rd, 2026 at 5 p.m. And a couple quick announcements. Number one is that we will have public comment twice tonight. One will be provided after staff reports or at 6 p.m., whichever comes first. And we will also have public comment on each agenda item when those items are presented. So with that, Julie, I'll ask for roll call.
Steve Muntean,
Here?
Gail Gary,
Here.
Donna Gosta,
Here.
Dave Barnes,
Here.
Michael Pacino,
Here.
Amy Dixon,
Here.
and Brian Swintek.
Here. Okay, good. Let's stand and say the pledge of allegiance. There's a flag behind me and one in the back wall. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, moving into our agenda tonight, we'll go into council reports. Who would like to lead us off tonight?
I have a
Ron?
million reports, so you guys ready to listen to me?
Yes.
I have four things to update you on. First, Councilor Muntean and I, we attended 2 meetings of the Housing Subcommittee. Once again, just to update you, this is to help us move a little faster on housing things. They come to us, update us on what's going on, staff, and then the 2 of us, and we kind of give general thoughts, but not making any formal decisions, that kind of thing. Good news, 11 units are filled in Riverview. 7 of them are city employees, and 4 of them are other individuals like education nonprofits who are in that waterfall. 8 of the 10 units are filled in Base Camp, and 1 more is underway. The tenants are happy and grateful. There was an anecdote that a tenant says it's significantly improved their quality of life. I believe they can stay in Steamboat. So that is a success story. So well done and wonderful that we had that done. These are the 5 big things that we've given guidance to staff about. You guys have received an update. I believe it's in your rainbow with all the details. First, our deed restriction relief. If any requests come in asking for us to remove a deed restriction, we have said that has always been should continue to be the policy of council, that we do not want to consider these requests and they should not be brought up to council. The second item is around housing pipeline management. Balancing Brown Ranch and the Campbell property, just discussing with staff about staffing constraints and the reality of aggressively pursuing both development at the Campbell property and Brown Ranch at the same time. There are going to be trade-offs. There will be certain requirements for us to do that, or we may want to decide to prioritize one over the other. So that was a general discussion that will likely come up to council as well for us to discuss in more detail. Third item is just a request. This is a personal request to help us visually see our housing pipeline. With all the different things coming in, a lot of them are short, medium, and long term. And it's hard, and maybe it's just for me, but I do feel it's hard for all of us as well to really understand where do all these pieces fit into the puzzle and where are our gaps, so that when we talk about prioritizing things, we know where we need to fill it in. So staff's going to try to come up with some clear visual type of summary for us to get a better grasp as we review those requests. Fourth item is more ranch housing. The Yamp Valley Medical Center has submitted an application for SDR funding back in September in support of more ranch. We did ask staff to re-examine our participation in that for the new council members. There were plans drawn up where it was a partnership between the city and the medical center as a development out there. We passed on it before, but we said, let's at least explore it and see what city participation could look like. Maybe more effective cost construction. That was one of the pushbacks last time, was how expensive it was. So staff is further exploring that. The final item is a request for SDR funding that is going through the process. And there's just initial terms for a request for a loan, similar to what was done for Riverview. nothing really to report on that other than it's working through the process and staff is continuing to talk to them about that request. Want to give you a heads up of an STR request coming through the pipeline. It is going to the ad hoc committee. This is a request from the Housing Authority to invest in infrastructure at the Whitehaven Mobile Home Park. As you may have heard, this would be replacing aging water and sewer infrastructure. In exchange for these funds, roughly about $2 million, there would be certain covenants on it, 140% of AMI cap, limit to local workforce. That also is working through the process and would eventually come to us as well. The last item that Councilor Montini and I wanted to raise to all of council was the discussion a few weeks ago about limiting the use of STR funds only to in-city limits. This is a pretty hard line set by council and I think might have unintended consequences that we didn't fully think through that night. There are a lot of partners in the Valley who actually had requests through the pipeline. And these community partners are a part of what makes Steamboat special. Think about the school or, Strawberry Parkway, that kind of thing. And so we really wanted to raise it to you guys of, could we reopen this for discussion to see, is this truly a hard line that we really wanted to, or my request would be, can we please reopen this conversation to really put thought into it? Because I think there might be unintended consequences that we really weren't aware of when we made that decision. So that's my updates for the Housing Subcommittee. That's the
Okay.
shortest one.
And we'll come
The
back,
longest one.
we'll come back to that last one, Counselor Swintek.
Yes.
At the end. But I did want to say that what Counselor Swintek has talked about is we want to give more information to council moving forward this year on anything and everything that's important for council. Was this helpful to get more into this, going through this for all of you? Okay, everybody?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Good. Thank you, Brian.
Great.
Thank you.
The next one, council had requested a dashboard update from the chamber about how things are going in the community with the low snowpack, how things are looking in town, numbers, that kind of thing. You all should have received this. It's a rainbow item. It's the yellow paper in the back of the room. The data points are very similar to what I had provided as well, that December was pretty decent because those trips were booked. We are expecting a significant drop, assuming all things remain the same. For example, you'll be noticing that February is forecasted to track 8.8% behind on occupancy. March is 17.2%. Those are the updates. I did two caveats. One, I asked Sarah Leonard for this a little late, so apologies. She did say this will not be as polished as they normally like it to be, and I said that's fine. That is my fault. That's not their fault. And then Amy did provide feedback to me already about asking for what do things look like in comparison to mountain towns. I think one of the directions, this is a good summary, but I would just tell Sarah maybe pick a few key KPIs on one page type of thing. This is a great first one that's very detailed, but I don't want to take too much of their time. But as you read through it, if there's additional information you want, I'm happy to ask Sarah to update it. We're thinking maybe monthly through the season, we can get these updates.
Super. Thank you.
Should I go on to number 3?
Yes.
Okay. These should be really quick. Councilor Montini and I attended the RCEDP, it's the Route County Economic Development Partnership. I just wanted to mention 2 things. One, mark your calendars. The Economic Summit is Wednesday, May 6th. That's always great to attend. The other piece, we got an update on a solar project out near the Hayden Airport. I'm not going to spend too much time, but I didn't know this was happening. This is independent of everything happening at the power plant. It's an external investment in a solar plant. There will be an investment in construction there, a few new jobs. It was an interesting place for them to invest given the infrastructure right in that place. But in case anybody asks you, I at least wanted to tell you that is happening. And my last thing is the Destination Development Committee meeting with the Chamber and Laura Sword. They are in planning mode. They have submitted their goals and metrics to the city for funds to be appropriated. They are working on a rebrand of all customer-facing assets. So you'll notice some new logos and things like that on things that they're circulating. And there's a drone show this weekend as part of the 250-150 celebration for the Winter Carnival. That's in addition to everything else happening. Those are all of my updates.
Okay, thank you. Who else wants to go? Counselor Barnes.
So this goes back to the joint meeting we had with Routt County Board of Commissioners. Due to the amount of mail I got in support for not signing the joint letter, as well as the hate mail I received. Fellow city councilors, I want to be direct and clear about why I did not sign onto the letter sent to Senators Bennett and Hickenlooper, why I believe issuing it in the name of the city of Steamboat Springs was a mistake. First, the letter was presented as speaking for our city and our county and all of its members. It did not. It was also sprung on me, us, without any prior discussion at a joint meeting with the Routt County Board of Commissioners. It was not brought up in our city council chambers for public discussion, and therefore how could it be a total reflection of our city and community? It reflects the views of some elected officials, not all, and certainly not the full range of perspectives held by the people we represent. This on a national, highly polarizing issue, attaching the city council's name without consensus undermines trust and misrepresents our community as a whole and sows further division. At a time when we need unity, all without offering any compromise or solutions other than not funding the government. Secondly, I fundamentally disagree with expanding the role of this council into national political advocacy. I was not elected to weigh in on federal immigration policy, federal enforcement budgets, or national political narratives. I believe doing so distracts from our actual responsibility and adds fuel to the national rhetoric at a time when local government credibility is already under pressure. We have a housing authority with significant public perception and accountability problems that is actively eroding trust. We have a tax base that is increasingly strained and unsustainable for our city, our community, and our small businesses. We face real and unresolved challenges around housing affordability, infrastructure maintenance, wildfire preparedness, and what is shaping up to be a very difficult fire season. Those issues and more are squarely within our authority and are not being solved by issuing divisive statements on national policy. I also take issue with the letter suggesting moral clarity exists only on one side of this debate. Constitutional rights matter, due process matters, and public safety matters. So does the rule of law. Peaceful protest is protected until it crosses the line, resulting in interference with active law enforcement operations, assault on officers, public and private property damage. Then they are the ones breaking the law, and encouraging them to do so or supporting others' efforts to do so is dangerous. These distinctions matter. And if we are to weigh in at all, our communications should reflect that complexity and offer unity and solutions rather than flatten it into a single divisive narrative. Our community, state, and country all need to take the temperature down. If we want to be productive and want to be unifiers, we should start by offering compromise solutions, acknowledging that reasonable and unreasonable disagreement exists, and focusing relentlessly on delivering competent, transparent, and accountable local governance. Going forward, I ask respectfully that any communication issued in the name of this council or our community requires a public discussion by all of council with full consensus, or at a minimum, clear acknowledgement that it does not represent the whole community and or the entire council, but rather individuals of our city government. I remain committed to working with each of you on the issues we are elected to solve, and I believe that is where our credibility, time, and energy belong. Thank you.
Okay. You have any other report?
So, on to better things. We attended CAST, Steve Montine, myself, and Gail, and Kelly Romero, and what a fabulous event it was to be with all these other mountain towns. We got to go visit specifically a company called Fading West that does modular construction. We're all going to get to see some of their product coming up. I believe they're going to be working with Rural Homes and building 21 units for the teachers out at Sleeping Giant. We learned from their factory that they have an infinite amount of configurations that they can produce. And at this time, they were producing 2 units a day out of the factory, but could ramp up on their base units to 4 units a day. So 4 homes a day they could build down there. They were coming in at their base levels at less than $200 a square foot. Of course, that doesn't cover transportation and or site work and placing the units. Super fascinating. We went over afterwards and went to one of their developments called The Farm. I urge people to check it out online. They have a high density and offered basically a wide array of all different kinds of units that were available for them to build, from townhomes to quadplexes, triplexes, and then single family homes, and also tiny homes. Super cool. We're going to try to figure out a way to get Fading Western representatives come up and give us all sort of a pitch on what they do.
Okay, thank you. Who else? Yes.
So I can present a RTA update. So first of all, good news. The Western Alliance Center has presented to the RTA board the Environmental Caring Leadership Award, basically to her taking environmental a leadership role in environments of this county. We see. So what we're trying to do right now is to basically stand up the RTA. So what we're working on right now is basically we got legal counsel approved 2 weeks ago. We're now trying to get the bylaws in place and adopt a procurement process. All those are critical because we want to get an RFP out starting actually next week, if possible, for banking services. So if there's any bankers out there, look for the RFP coming very quickly for our banking services. That allows us to get the money from Ski Corp of a total of $1 million, get it in the bank, which allows us to then start hiring and paying against that. Our next priority is basically to get a executive director for it, and so we need to set up a process for that. We're evaluating how we want to do that. Most likely, and a process that I would support. So I'll let you folks understand what my thinking is that we set up a subcommittee for hiring with 2 board members from the RTA board and 2 non-board members. That allows us to bring in expertise that we may not have within the board for hiring an executive director for a transit system. So that's something that we'll most likely take up and finalize in our next meeting in 2 weeks. The one request I had is through this right now we have a commitment from Ski Corp for $1 million over 3 years. That is the only agreement that we know is in place. So if you know of other discussions about funding from Ski Corp, please let me know so I can bring it back to the board. But that's the only funding that we are aware of at this point in time. And then as just a side note, Stagecoach Discovery Group actually sent a representative to the last board meeting and took that as a very positive, early engagement opportunity with Discovery Group. So that's it for RTA, and that's all I have.
Okay, thank you. Who else? Councilor Gary.
Yep, I have a couple of updates. So the hearing on the vacancy tax, the state legislation that enables statutorily created communities to impose vacancy taxes once they've been approved by the kind of their general public, was postponed from the Finance Committee from Monday until this upcoming Monday. So hopefully everybody has had a chance to take a look at that piece of legislation. And if you have any sort of questions for, I'd love to be able to testify on behalf of City Council at Monday's hearing as opposed to as an individual council member. Because again, remembering as a home rule community, we already have these capabilities and this authority to impose a vacancy tax, again, if it's approved by the voters. And this just enables our statutorily created communities across the state to be able to do the same thing. So maybe we can put a pin in that one too and come back to that. Exciting, Winter Carnival is this week. So it kicks off, I think, tomorrow night with the kind of honoring of the Winter Carnival royalty, as well as the kind of the opening reception, and then moves on throughout the week. And we again will participate in the Diamond Hitch Parade. So I think thanks again to everybody who has volunteered to do that. More details to come, but I think we're all pretty acquainted with what we need to do, and just want to say again, thank you to the Yeager family and the Bar Lazy L Ranch, who has agreed to again pull us behind their sleigh. So that's always an exciting time of year. And then just to follow up on the comments about the cast event, I also, attended, and there were it's just a great opportunity to hear from our other peer communities as to what they're doing, what they're facing, and gives us the opportunity also to learn from their experiences as well as to share our experience. And a couple of things that came up in addition to what Councilor Barnes mentioned, it was interesting, Frisco actively uses the right-of-way for parking, in terms of when they have certain issues, and have considered that as a potential solution. I don't know, Councilor Martina, if you're going to talk about one of the nonprofit developers that we heard from, but it was interesting in terms of some of the things that they've been able to bring to the table. And I think most importantly is that they're working with the Forest Service on that administrative parcel of land in Summit County. So maybe some lessons to learn from them. We also heard from a pollster who does a lot of polling for a lot of our peer communities. And it was really interesting in terms of kind of the information that he shared. He talked about, again, just some of his observations as well as the trends that he's seeing. And as I say, he's conducted a number of different polls that are specific to ballot measures, to impose new taxes or to increase existing mill levies. He talked, interestingly enough, about the headwinds that exist in odd years, right? Just in terms of what the voter turnout is and how that plays into the eventual success of various different ballot initiatives. He also provided information, and I think I sent out all of the decks presentations from the meeting, so that should be in your inbox. We did that at the end of the day, but it's interesting in terms of kind of the pyramid of what can likely be successful, and no surprise, fire and EMS services are, kind of at the top in terms of an item that people are very concerned about and willing to actually, spend more money to make sure that we have the proper services to protect us. He also, again, talked about various different polling, various different measures and how kind of the voter turnout broke down. And I think the most important, and again, can defer to you all too to add to this, but one of the real big takeaways is that really, in order to be successful in anything, there has to be a level of trust with council, as well as positive ratings in terms of how the city is performing our city services. And I think ultimately, probably not for this evening, but I'd want to talk about potentially having him come give us a presentation and his perspective on kind of how we could use the information and how it would make us be more effective in terms of how we get our jobs done. So that's my report.
Thank you. Anything from you, Councilor Pacino?
Good this week.
And how about you, Councilor Dixon? Anything from you?
Hello. Hi, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Sorry, I'm not there in person, although I think you all will appreciate that since I'm not feeling well. I just have one update. I attended the Parkland Acquisition Committee meeting on January 21st, and we talked about Slate Creek. And just a reminder, the purchase price for Slate Creek was around $5.2 million. Staff has done a fantastic job with acquiring grants to help cover the purchase cost. And right now, the grant total is about $3.7 million that's been committed to the Slate Creek purchase. That does leave us with a delta of about $1.5 million. Our original ask for the PDR was $1.3 million. And to back up, for those of you that are not familiar with PDR, it's the Purchase of Development Rights Program through the county. So our original ask is 1.3. We received around 620,000. Staff is going to go back to the PDR for an additional 700,000. The application is due in May for this PDR cycle and for this additional funding. The timing is going to be really close because we will be notified July of 2026 if we will receive the additional PDR funds. Of note, we are closing on Slate Creek July of 2026. We're still fine. Accommodations tax is currently unappropriated and could potentially be used, but we really want to find other funding to help close that gap. So there may be an ask at a future council meeting to, if appropriate, to reach out to the county and really, one, thank them for the initial 620,000. And then really advocate for this additional 700,000 because this is such a large community benefit. The last update for the Parkland Acquisition Committee meeting was we received a status update on Whistler Park. The earnest money was due at the end of January, and the transaction took place and is being held at Land and Title, and I believe it was about 100,000. Staff has been in touch with the Steamboat Springs School District, so that's all moving forward. The title work and survey is scheduled for June of 2026. And then one other, small note, but important one that staff's working on. The staff is working with the Community Foundation to change the name of the fund that we set up for individuals and community members to donate to the purchase of Whistler Park. While we have an account set up, staff and the Community Foundation thought we should really have a specific name to help drive folks to this fund and donate. So that's being done, and we will get regular public reports going out for this account. So anyway, things are moving forward. Kudos to staff. They've done a really excellent job with Slate Creek and Whistler Park. So more to come.
Okay. Thank you, Councilor Dixon. Hope you feel better.
Thank you.
Okay. I attended the send-off for the Olympians last Saturday up at the base, and it was, if you haven't been there, you got to go to one. Of course, you have to wait 4 years now, but it was quite the experience. What an iconic event to have. It was just totally packed with people, and they brought up every Olympian from the past on stage and recognized them. It was truly a phenomenal event, and just totally packed. And half the people there were tourists, which was exciting too, to see all the tourists. So thanks Ski Corps and Winter Sports Club and everyone else who helped work on that. I did want to mention that we have 9 athletes who I think now the last one has left. So they're all off to Milan right now. And I just wanted to read their names real quickly. These are the 9 athletes that we need to what? Tune into NBC and Peacock at whatever hour of the day or night it is and watch these people. And I'm going to read their names because I really think it's important that we appreciate the effort that they have put in to get where they've gotten. And if I mispronounce somebody's name, somebody else up here needs to correct me, okay? So I had Jalen Koff, Cody Winters, Maddie Shafrick, Riley Jacobs, Landon Windler, Annika Belshaw, Jason Colby, Nicholas Malazinski, and here's the one I might have problems with, Olivia Giaccia. Okay, so I just wanted to say that we're really proud of all of you and wish you all the best. And not only the best in terms of doing your best, but having the best experience too. And we're all rooting for you. So thank you to all of them. And that'll be exciting to watch the next couple of weeks.
Go USA.
Yeah, yeah. A couple other quick things. We did with the commissioners meeting, we also went over the OPG and Mission Rock action plan at that meeting. And it was quite detailed. And I think they've already started on a number of things and had a few open houses as well. So I think we remain optimistic, cautiously optimistic that we are seeing meaningful change and that change will continue, but we're not going to take our foot off on this one. And we will continue to inspect what we expect until those expectations are where they need to be. So hopefully it's a good start. As far as the CAS meeting, I think Councilors Geary and Barnes covered most of those things very well. It was really nice to see all the different municipalities and towns and whatnot there. And we look forward to attending future ones as well and following up as the counselor stated. So with that, I'm going to just go back to a couple of the things we talked about here.
Before you do that, you go back, one thing, any summary of how the open house went? Because I was out of town, couldn't attend it. Is there any takeaways from the open house?
I think there were 3 of them,
Okay.
3 open houses. Did you attend, Councilor Barnes?
3.
Yeah, yeah. Maybe one of you can maybe summarize?
Yeah, I attended all 3 open houses. They had an apartment at each one of the apartment complexes for us to view. It turned out to be an open house for prospective tenants. They saw the notification for open house, and so they came looking for apartments. They also had a couple of on-the-fly interviews, people looking for work, so they hired a couple people while they came to look at these open houses. More importantly, the insides of the places, and I've been in all 3 of the complexes months before, and there's a world of difference in cleanliness and how they smell and how they look. I think we can't trust how they're going to operate in the future, but we can trust right now that the tenants are having a much better experience than they were 2 or 3 months ago. And so that's a big positive impact.
Great. Any other comments on that?
And just at their common area facilities were also being, one of them was being renovated, but the other 2 were open, and they were coming up with new rules and new ways to access those for the tenants as well.
Great. Does that answer?
Yep. Thank you.
Okay. So let's go back to Councilor Swintek brought up the discussion around STR funds and what geography those could be available in. Did you want to again summarize the kind of the options there or the rationale why you thought we might be missing something if we didn't consider some of these other?
There were projects that were in the pipeline with community partners that are outside of city limits. And I just think that there were unintended consequences when we said it should be limited to city boundaries. If you think about, once again, like Perry Mansfield, Sleeping Giant, there's a lot of community partners out there where they are part of what comes to Steamboat, helps make us love this town, and they are feeling these issues as well. So I would like us to just revisit this topic to see if we would be open to not restricting it only to city limits.
Okay. Yes.
So I would be supportive of that. One thing I want to make sure is that if we open it up, that we have some guidelines of how we open up so that we can be consistent across our decisions. But I agree that, our hard line is something that I think needs to be revisited.
That's inherent in the process. That is how it's done. Is right now it's ad hoc committee, but there is a whole process that Brad and Gates have been developing for how these funds are allocated. So
yeah,
that is inherent.
I think that's a fantastic idea. Thank you for bringing it back up. I completely support us broadening the funds of the STR because it really impacts our workforce. And I think one of the things that I was impressed upon our electorate this last election was they voted 89% for the RTA. That says that our citizens in this town care about the citizens of the entire Yampa Valley, more so than any other of the communities. It was the highest that we got. And with that means that we have a community here in Steamboat that cares about Hayden and Craig and Oak Creek. And so with this STR funds, the tourists do impact everybody, but we need those people. And I think it's important that we support that. So I'm glad you brought that up.
I have one question on that, excuse my ignorance, but is it right now the city limits or is it the fire district? What is the area we can allocate STR funds to right now?
There was never any restriction. It was just when this council discussed a couple weeks ago, they wanted to restrict it only to city boundaries.
Okay.
Yeah.
I support bringing.
And was that just for the ad hoc committee or just in general?
Generally speaking.
Perfect. Thank you.
So you're advocating beyond like the housing authority or the fire district? Or do we just take it on a case-by-case basis?
I would I mean, I would say, why would we restrict it? I mean, if somebody comes in trying to develop in Wyoming, it would be like, why are you applying?
Right, but I mean,
Why would we
yeah.
limit these are potential opportunities. I mean, that's how I see it. What we're
Mhm,
doing is we're filtering out potential opportunities.
mhm.
So
So it sounds like everybody would like to put this on. Amy? That's a yes from Amy or raising your
Well-
hand?
I know, that's, I was just doing the Zoom, raise the hand. I support it. I think there still should be some guardrails. I support the schools, outside the city limits accessing the STR. I would have to say, I would have a real hard time supporting a major developer, coming in, trying to access STR. And also I think it would give me pause to have Craig, ask for STR. I'm not saying no, but I would like to see some type of guardrails. But I
Okay.
do support looking at it for sure.
I have one legal question, and that is, what geographical restrictions do we have of the STR funds?
There is nothing specified in the ordinance, but there are findings in the ordinance about regional impacts to the housing problem. So, nobody's ever asked me, could we do it outside of the county? But I think definitely anything in Routt County would be very easy to justify. If you wanted to go further than that, I think it would depend a little bit on the facts and the project and how it connects to the purposes of the ordinance.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So it sounds like everyone's at least interested in pursuing this.
Yeah, I mean, I can certainly support saying that we don't need to stop at the boundaries of the city, but I do concur and think we would want to think about, potential other boundaries or guardrails. And maybe that's just on a case-by-case basis.
Tom, is this something we would just look at on a case-by-case basis, or is there something that we should formally?
I
Formalize.
would suggest, yes, we can look at it case by case basis, but then it's going to come back to you when there's a case that's a question mark and you're going to be having this conversation again. So I would suggest creating or establishing what you think the boundary should be. The suggestion was the same boundary as the housing authority. There's sort of a consistency there, which is essentially the fire district. So it's bigger certainly than the city limits and incorporates sort of the surrounding area, but doesn't go as far as, Hayden and down south. And then there's no question about overlap with other housing authorities as well, which could be a question mark. So I certainly think it's cleaner if you establish what you think an appropriate boundary would be.
That doesn't include Milner either, right? The fire district.
Yeah, Milner, I think, is just outside of it because I think we had that issue with when the Milner Mobile Home Park came in and asked, so.
I would push back on that. Hayden is a great example. I don't see why we wouldn't want to hear of any potential project out there where we could hit a great AMI for a great product out there. There's a lot of people who commute from Hayden to here, and many of them who we work with.
And so can we do a thumbs up, thumbs down on whether we discuss this? But versus trying to make a decision here?
And we can also try to come up with a set of criteria that might be helpful. That's not necessarily boundary specific, but more project type specific.
Okay, can we have a thumbs up or down on having Tom take that next step then? Okay, thank you. And the other piece that was needed follow-up on was Councilor Gary, who is going to be talking about the vacancy tax. And I think what you were asking is, can you get a consensus from council here to represent council versus your own personal opinion?
Yes, House Bill 261036.
Yes. So, and that's when?
Next Monday.
Next Monday. So you need a decision on that tonight. So can you give everybody a quick overview again of that so that we can make an
Yeah,
informed decision as to the difference? I mean, we can do what we want here, obviously, because we're home ruled, but what does this really do?
Well, I mean, and again, I'll defer to Dan to answer any sort of questions because I think that might be more appropriate to clarify any pieces of information that any council members want. But basically, this is House Bill 261036 authorizes local governments to impose taxes on vacant residential properties, right? And so we as a home rule community can already do that. And again, even for the statutorily created communities, they can impose it, but it still has to go to a vote of their electorate. So that's kind of the primary it's enabling language. I mean, there is specific language that would then pertain to those statutory communities. But I think, Dan, it's not restrictive, right, in terms of on us, on a home rule community. Or so again, if others, and again, I would just say too, we're supporting our Colorado Association of Ski Town Communities, our other, and typically from a Colorado Municipal League perspective, if they're moving forward with something, it's better if we're better if we support their efforts. And as I say, I would love to be able to say that I'm testifying on behalf of the Steamboat Springs City Council.
Do you know, can you explain what context you think you're testifying in?
Basically just supporting giving statutorily created communities the ability to do this. And why it's important, and talking about the fact that we're all facing tremendous crisis in terms of, affordable housing, and being able to paint a little bit of a picture in terms of what we're facing as mountain towns when we take a look at what the, median price income is, the fact that we have 3,600 people that commute into this valley daily. And so kind of along that lines. I probably wouldn't get into the specifics.
Some other community went through all the trouble of trying to implement it. So I'd support you testifying.
Yes. Dan, did you have something to say first in response?
I kind of heard a question from Councilmember Gary about what the bill does, if anyone's interested in hearing that. So there are two buckets of authority. The city currently has the authority, I believe, and I think that's the consensus, pursuant to the Constitution, to implement vacancy taxes. What we can't do is do it as a property tax. That's the biggest limitation on our authority. This bill or statute would create a second bucket of authority, which is in some ways broader. And the reason it's broader is that it would give the city and other municipalities the power to do a vacancy tax as a property tax. But it also has some limitations that don't apply to our constitutional authority. There are two big pieces. One is that the funds have to be used for housing purposes. And the other is that units that are licensed as short-term rentals cannot be subject to the tax. And those two limitations don't apply to our constitutional powers. But if if they're sort of passed and the city were to be interested in using the statutory powers, it would happen with those strings that the legislature attached to the legislation.
Okay, thanks. Yes.
So I have a number of questions, and some of them are for legal. And for me to support this, I'd want to basically deliberate across this bill and really make sure, first of all, that there's no unintended consequences for the home rule portion of this. So the question to you, Mr. President, is basically, do you want to deliberate this now? I cannot support this without deliberation of this and make sure my questions are all answered. And so I can ask my questions if you'd like me to, but it could be lengthy.
Hold on that.
Thank you. It's one of these things that as a community and as a city council leading this governance, we voted down to going forward with the vacancy tax. So in one sense, there really isn't a support for that. However, this is one of those tools in that we need in the arsenal for every community. So on a state statute level, we're lucky we're home rule. It's the other colleagues that we have at CAST and other different cities in this town that let the electorate have the option of voting it up or down. Let the local leadership vote it up or down. It's the same thing where I've been fighting in the same group to get a real estate transfer tax that the state can then, we then can vote for that option. It's just another tool. It's really not complicated on the sense of what we're agreeing to or disagreeing about vacancy tax. It's more of letting that tool be an option for those communities to be able to move forward with their electorate. So with that, I would support it. You know, speak on behalf of it, let them have the tools. I know you were for vacancy tax, but as a community, I think it's just one of those tools that we need to share.
I think to be totally clear, Dan, that this, supporting this tool for all the mountain towns, so to speak, has no impact on what we do locally.
No, it doesn't change the constitutional bucket at all, our current powers. There is specific language that says that it is not intended to limit those existing powers for home rule municipalities.
Okay.
Yeah, it does.
Okay. All right.
If we're asking questions, I guess legal questions, then I guess I'll open it up and ask
Well, I
questions.
just want to see where everybody else is on this. Okay, I know we're Councilor Pacino, Councilor Barnes, Councilor Gary, Councilor Swintek, and Councilor Montine. So that's 5 right now who would support that.
Yeah.
Amy gives a thumbs up, so that's 6. So we have 6. So if you have a question,
Yeah, I guess I would.
but I don't want to go down a rabbit hole.
Yeah, I don't
here.
want to go a rabbit hole, but I do want to get some, I want, first of all, so it's the unintended consequence. So if this law is passed and we decide in the future that we have a vacancy tax that we would like to put in place to help with our capital improvements, does this, the fact that there's a state vacancy tax, defined, does this preclude us from actually having a vacancy tax that would help us with our capital improvements? Or does this mean that if we had a vacancy tax, we would have to have it for affordable housing?
And it does not mean that we would have to have it for affordable housing. It does not affect the current language with that current carve out, does not affect the city's current power to adopt a vacancy tax. The only way a city tax would be limited would be if the city wanted to take advantage of the property tax provisions in the bill. In that case, yeah, then we would have to do it with the strings that the legislature attached to the bill. But it doesn't affect our existing authority in any kind of direct legal way.
You had stated something, though, that you assumed this was a state vacancy tax. That is not what this is at all.
Maybe we take this off.
Yeah.
It creates authority for statutory cities and counties to implement these taxes, and they do not currently have that authority. It's only home rule that currently has the ability to do that.
And so the bottom line of this is this has no impact on our ability to, if we wanted to put another vacancy tax on the ballot for whatever reason we wanted, we could do.
That's correct.
Okay.
And I'll absolutely share my talking points with Dan and can share them with you all as well.
Okay.
So based upon that and based upon, basically it doesn't impact us. And what we're giving, enough, other jurisdictions, that tool in their toolbox, then I'm fine with it.
Okay. So it sounds like we have 7 yes, thumbs up. Okay.
So thank you.
You got it. All right. It's 10 of 6. So let's move through agenda review. I think we can get through that and then we'll open it up to public comment.
Sorry, I don't want to drag this out, but can I just address what Councilor Barnes had mentioned about this letter?
Go ahead.
Thank you. I appreciate we all have different perspectives. I appreciate the community will never agree on everything. The way I see it, we take an oath, all 7 of us has taken an oath to support the Constitution. And the spirit of that letter, regardless of how it was written, the spirit was that there are concerns about the violation of constitutional rights. And we as leaders, I believe it is not our job to echo what everyone is saying. It's our job to act as leaders when we are seeing something that's not right. And that was the spirit of that letter, and that was what was being communicated and shared, is trying to defend the Constitution. What was written and everything like that, I can understand how there may be a misunderstanding or whatever, but I just want to put that out there because I think it's very important to highlight that fact.
Sure.
Thanks.
And I think to add to that, I mean, again, it was signed by individual council people. So it was not sent on behalf of, again, like the conversation that we just had about testifying either as individuals or on behalf of city council. So again, just to clarify for the public.
Okay, thank you. Let's move on to agenda review. Okay, so let's turn to the regular meeting, which is scheduled for February 10th. Is everybody there? This is a relatively a meeting where we're going to do a work session, but we were going to do a short city council meeting, which I believe has now been pulled. Is that correct, Tom?
Yes, yes, that's correct. It's been pulled. So
So-
it's just the work session.
All we're going to do is the work session on February 10th. And if you can see, it's about two things, city council goals. Tom sent those out today for you to look at what he put together, and a review of the Housing Authority IGA. Any questions on either one of those? Tom, do you expect more input from council members on either one of these before the work session?
I hope not, because I got to get my packet in by tomorrow.
Okay. Good. Questions? Okay, let's move on then to Tuesday, February 17th. Again, as you'll see there, we will have a community report there on herbicide within Parkland. And then we have a number of couple consent calendar items, and then some second reading of ordinances.
President Muntean,
Yes.
I do believe there's an additional community report that is the Housing Authority. They were invited, I believe, to come present their strategic plan and annual report.
Yes.
I conferred with Kathy Meyer, and they are planning on being here. So that is a second community report.
Okay. And were we going to, I had a question mark on Moore Ranch for a possible executive session. That's not going to happen.
No, I don't think we need an executive session at this point.
Okay, good.
And in terms of the YVHA, will that also include kind of that pipeline request? Or will this be, I think there was a question about, potentially coming forth with what's in the pipeline. Will that be included?
We
Likely.
can pass that on as a hopeful expectation.
Perfect. Thank you.
Can I share this February 17th meeting? I'm worried about the length of this. Are we looking at a marathon session with 2 community reports? And then, I mean, we're talking about heavy topics like deed restriction pilot program.
I think the CDOT, well, the 9 and 10 will be pulled, right?
Yeah, I think when we looked at this, it was
Not
not
on there.
estimated to be too long.
Okay, great.
How long did we allocate for the YVHA?
I don't know that we did, but we could put, I don't know, 30 minutes, 45 minutes,
10?
shorter, 15 minutes. They're saying it's going to be short, so
Okay,
we'll put
30.
30 minutes on there.
okay. All right. All right, agenda on March 3rd. Again, right now, it is a very open agenda at this point in time. I don't think there's anything. The wildfire code is on there for a first reading, but not much else. Any questions on that? And then March 10th. March 10th is right now it's a work session, and the topics for that work session are still being worked on.
Yeah, and your meeting on the 10th of February will provide a lot of information in terms of your goals and how to populate the work session.
Yes,
agenda. So
and we should be able to populate a lot more of them as we go along then. Okay, any questions on any of those items?
President Martin?
Yes,
Hi.
Councilor Dixon.
Hi, thank you. Just for the work session in March. And thank you, Tom. I think I just heard you say, looking at our goals. I really would love to get that on a work session in March. Because if any of our goals potentially have budget impact, we need to be talking about that probably ASAP. So staff can, when they're preparing the budget starting this summer. That's it.
Okay,
We'll keep that in mind as we move forward.
okay. Other thoughts? Okay, if not, we'll move on. Next item on the agenda is public comment. So at this point in time, we're opening it up to public comment. City Council will make no decisions or take any actions except to direct the city manager. Those addressing City Council are requested to identify themselves by name and address. You have 3 minutes, and this public comment is about items that are not on tonight's agenda. So is there anyone in the audience who would like to make public comment tonight? Come on down, Dave.
Good evening, Council. Thanks for allowing me a little bit of time. I want to take a few minutes to
Can
share.
you introduce yourself first, please?
Sorry, I've done this before. Dave Hunter, I'm the President Chief Operating Officer for Steamboat Ski Resort. I want to take a few minutes to provide a little perspective on what we're seeing at the resort during what has been an incredibly challenging season, not just for Steamboat, but the entire state and largely across the West. This is the lowest snowpack in Colorado that's ever been recorded. That reality has shaped the way that we're looking at how we're operating the resort. To address some of the things that we've been hearing throughout the community and give you a more clear picture of how we're managing our business, I'll start off with the beginning of the season. We were able to make our opening date on November 22nd. That is 100% thanks to the investment in Wild Blue and the snowmaking up in Sunshine. We opened that terrain up high for the first time in the history of the ski area on opening day. It was a pivot, but it was extremely rewarding to see that investment at work. We had the same scenario 4 years ago, and we had to delay our opening by 2 weeks. We know that that can be detrimental early in the season. Then we headed into the holiday season, flights started, and we knew that the resort would not be the main event due to limited terrain. And it should come as no surprise that our visitation was and continues to be down. Although many guests came over the holidays and continue to come to enjoy all the great things that our community has to offer. At the same time, national headlines continued with no snow in the West, no snow in Colorado. As we moved into January and we saw the impacts of the conditions and visitation, we continued to adjust our operations to plan and respond to what we were seeing. In this business, if there's one thing in 35 years I've learned is you've got to be able to adapt. So we're managing our business based on guest demand and constantly adjusting. I'll say that again, we are constantly adjusting. As of today, the reality is we have 75% of our terrain open, which means we are not operating at the level in which we recruited and staffed to back in the fall. Our primary focus is protecting hours for our full-time employees, which meant reducing hours for some seasonal and part-time employees, and that is super difficult to do. We realize that these impacts also are not isolated just to the resort. They extend to the broader macroeconomic environment and what's happening. The state and many communities around the Front Range are also mitigating actively. As we look ahead to the rest of the season, we continue to see risk. That's the reality that we're operating in, and it's what we are exactly strategizing against. I'm extremely proud of the work that our teams have done, limiting the impacts to employees and maximizing the amount of terrain we have for our community and for our guests. We're working hard to make sure that all of our staff are being highly communicated to about the resources we have available, mental well-being support, on-site food pantries, free counseling, therapy sessions. And there are some, and I'm going to go a little over here, there are a lot of bright spots that I think are super important that we remain grounded in. And a few of those are our destination guests largely are very resilient. They continue to come to Steamboat. especially those that come through our airline program. Second is the Icon Pass, bringing frequency guests throughout the season. It's a huge bright spot. The amazing team and job that our teams have done and continue to do. And of course, I mentioned earlier, the full steam ahead investments. This is how we are adjusting to minimize the impacts while positioning Steamboat to have a strong close to the season. Lastly, I just want to say that it was awesome to host the Ski Town USA celebration last weekend. It's a powerful reminder of the pride that our community has, even in a difficult winter. Thank you for your time this evening.
Thank you, Dave.
Thanks, Dave.
Okay, is there anyone else in the audience who would like to make a public comment? Please come on down. Okay, is there anyone online who would like to make a public comment? Okay, seeing none, we will close public comment and we will move to the city manager's report.
Okay, thank you, President Muntean. Tonight's city manager report can be found on the city's website, steamboatsprings.net, as well as all the previous city managers' report. Great place for a lot of information on what all of the city does and all the departments are working on. So tonight, starting off with the deputy city manager department, just as an update, the deputy city manager and assistant city attorney still are working on negotiating a contract to purchase the Colorado Department of Transportation parcels adjacent to the Campbell property, while at the same time continuing to work through the details of the Campbell property purchase agreement, including due diligence items, title, survey, and appraisal. So we will continue to keep council apprised as that moves forward and progresses. In communications, the communications team continues to focus on helping residents easily find information and understand city services. And this includes all of the social media posts that are listed, as well as all the media releases that they continually work on. That is a small but mighty group and continues to do a great job of communicating to the community all the great things that the city does. So a lot of information about all of that in this report. In information technology, just a big kudos to one of the city's new employees, the applications analyst, Eli White. Just a kudos for his rapid onboarding and immediately contributing to resolving multiple Workday integration issues and implementing necessary changes. So nice to see new employees come in and make an impact right away. So thank you. They are working on drafting project charter templates to standardize and improve the project initiation and planning process for city project managers. I'd just like to highlight that as that's a continued part of our efforts for continuous improvement. And we're constantly trying to improve the way we do things, and that's an example of one of those. In facilities, 2026 projects. This year, the team is going to be overseeing and executing 48 planned maintenance projects across 28 different buildings. They are managing 18 capital improvement projects, including new building designs to meet staff operational space needs, deferred maintenance initiatives, and major decarbonization efforts aimed at advancing sustainability goals. So another busy year for the facilities team. And I'd just like to highlight, they also maintain 10 historic properties. They include the Carver Power Plant, Elkins House, Depot, Legacy Ranch, the Butterfly Building, which is the Land Trust Building on 11th, Howelson Hill, Moore Barn, Community House at Little Toots, Mesa Schoolhouse, and the Raider Building. And I highlight that just because the facilities team plays a big role in helping the city, but also in helping maintain the community identity as a historic Western community. So kudos for them and their efforts on that. A lot of information on all the grants that we've submitted and that we have received. In the waste division and recycling, just to note that staff has contracted with the Western Resilience Center to provide support for waste diversion outreach and education for 2026. That'll include support with recycling education, yard waste drop-off events, community engagement and tabling at events, and organics diversion, and sector-specific focus groups, which includes restaurants, buildings, automotive, to assist them with diversion opportunities for their very specific waste streams. So we appreciate that contract, and they're a great partner. Moving on to finance. The budget division successfully published the 2026 budget book. So for those that want to dig in, that interactive version is available online through the Financial Services Department on the city's website. And just a note that OpenGov, which is our financial transparency software, will be temporarily unavailable while we complete the conversion of the charts of accounts for Workday integration. And our goal is to have that back online by June of 26, just in time for the 2027 budget cycle. In procurement and contracting, procurement team is preparing for another high volume year in 2026. A key priority for the team is supporting local businesses whenever possible. And this was a conversation not too long ago that I just want to note that through ongoing education and reminders about our local preference policy, we're proud to report that over 40% of contracts in 2025 were awarded to local vendors, which is well above industry standards of 20 to 30% for comparable municipalities. So well done on that, and that's paying off. That policy is paying off. Let's see, moving on to HR. HR remains busy with their 2026 goal setting, continued performance management training on SMART goals and development plans for employees, as well as starting the front end of the compensation survey season. So we are working on providing our data to respond to various independent surveys for robust benchmarking survey data, which really allows us to stay competitive in our total rewards program. So nice to see that. And they are obviously actively recruiting for open positions, which keeps them busy as well. In police department, a lot of information on the service calls. Just to note that the PD and the all crimes enforcement team wrapped up 2 significant drug investigations, both stemming from the 2025 fentanyl overdoses. They were extremely difficult and time-consuming investigations, and they did result in a couple of arrests, so congratulations. Their patrol operations remain steady with ongoing focus on traffic and DUI enforcement. The police department ended 2025 with 220 DUI arrests, the highest number in the last 5 years. So I've noted this before, and I'll keep referencing this because I think it's an important stat and a reminder to the community that now, particularly these days, if you're drinking and driving, you're going to get caught. Remain safe, please. Just also a note, community service officers have seen a significant uptick in dog off-leash issues throughout town. There was a recent incident involving several community members bit by a dog at large. So please, a reminder to the community to please keep your dogs on the leash where they are required to be on a leash. We do have off-leash areas. If you want to let your dog off leash, please take it to those areas. This is the type of thing that happens when we don't follow those rules. Lots of information on the police training and ongoing police academy or police training. And I just want to note that last week they celebrated another successful year at the police department with their annual awards ceremony. So congratulations to Lisa Eifling for the Officer of the Year, Mikey Bacino for Leader of the Year, Jennifer Good and Wayne Scherer for Professional Staff of the Year, and Cassandra Baca for Citizen of the Year Award. This event showcases their personnel and commitment to serving this community. So congratulations to all those folks for their commitment. Fire department. The department was excited to host a hiring process in December for 3 new firefighting EMT positions. They had 60 applicants. They narrowed it down to 14 candidates that convened for a couple days. They were excited to announce that they have hired Michael Lackey, Chris Kelly, and Jay Howard as their latest firefighter recruits. The 3 newest members will start their training this month, consist of an ambulance field training program for 3 months and intense firefighter and academy for 3 months. So congratulations to them. Lots of information on calls for service, fire prevention activities, and all of the training that the fire folks are engaged in. And I believe that concludes my report.
Okay, thank you, Tom. Anyone have questions for Tom? Okay, thank you again. Yes.
I do want to provide one update that's not on the report that I believe Councilor Gary asked for an update, and that was just a quick update on the Brown Ranch Community Solutions. As you recall, staff, from your January 20th meeting, we did revise the scope to focus on standing up the new governance body that will serve as the decision-making body for coordinated planning for the Brown Ranch project. That project is underway. We are moving forward with contracting and including initial planning for the first governance meeting. So the city's representatives on that should see an email coming soon to check for availability of upcoming meetings in the next day or so. We did receive our year 2 payment from the Denver Foundation, so we're working on making sure we keep that scope within that particular budget, which means that that project will be 100% grant funded. And then finally, the city council discussed the possibility of the second scope, which was the scenario planning for a smaller development project out at Brown Ranch. And the expectation is that that scenario scope will be presented to that new governance group. And then they would sort of make a decision on moving forward and how to move forward. And obviously, any commitment of city resources would come back to you for any kind of approval. So just wanted to give you an update that that is moving forward, and that's sort of the next steps.
Thank you. Okay, anything else?
President Montine?
Go ahead, Councilor Dixon.
Hi, Tom, I just want to thank Paramedic Werning. In the report, it talks about their work around obstetric emergencies. I'm sure the rest of council knows, and clearly the staff knows, that much of Northwest Colorado is considered a maternity care desert, meaning there are no hospitals or birth centers offering obstetric care or even obstetric providers. And we see that acutely in our community, where Steamboat really is the provider for pregnant people. And we see people coming in from different communities for prenatal care and for delivery. And as the city manager report pointed out, a 911 call where the crew delivered a newborn in the back of an ambulance. And I think we've all seen the stories where pregnant people have not made it into Steamboat and delivered in their car. So while this is a larger public health issue, I just want to call out and thank Paramedic Werning for this work, because it's really important.
Thank you, Councilor Dixon.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Dixon. I'll pass that on to Julie. Appreciate that.
Okay. We will move on to item G, which is our consent calendar motions, resolutions, ordinances, first reading. And items on the consent calendar may be reviewed and commented upon in the same manner as other agenda items. Any member of the council or the public may request withdrawal of any item from the consent calendar for further discussion at any time prior to approval. If items are not removed, they may be approved with a single motion. So what I'm going to do here is read G 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. And after reading those, I will come back and ask council if anyone wants to pull any of those, as well as asking the public if they would also want to pull any of those. So item number 4 is a resolution approving a development plan and major variance PL 202-50309 Marshall House Development Plan. Item number 5 is a resolution adopting one new street name in the city of Steamboat Springs, Amelia Court. Number 6 is a resolution approving submittal of an airport improvements program grant application and an airport infrastructure grant application to the Federal Aviation Administration for the airport lighting project. Number 7 is a resolution of the City Council of Steamboat Springs adopting the City of Steamboat Springs affordable housing guidelines. Number 8 is the first reading of an ordinance approving City of Steamboat Springs deed restriction purchase program agreements. And number 9 is the first reading of an ordinance approving a supplemental budget appropriation for 2026 utilizing short-term rental tax funds to acquire deed restrictions through pilot purchase of deed restriction program. So I would ask, is there anyone on City Council who would like to pull any of those items?
Yes.
Which one would you like to pull, Councilor Augusto?
I'd like to pull 4, 7, and 8.
4, 7, and 8.
And I think a question is, if we pull 7 and 8, do we need to pull 9?
I think we should. Okay. 4, 7, 8, 9. Is there anyone, any other counselor want to pull any other item? Okay, is there anybody in the audience or online who would like to pull any other item? Okay, hearing none, seeing none, we will leave items 5 and 6 on the consent calendar, and I would ask for a motion to approve items 5 and 6.
So moved.
Okay, we have a motion by Counselor Gary, second by Counselor Pacino. Any further discussion? If not, all those in agreement, say aye. Approve, say aye.
Aye.
Any in opposition? Motion passes 7-0. Okay. We'll move to item number 4, which is a resolution approving a development plan and major variance PL 2025039 Marshall House Development Plan. Caitlin?
Good evening, members of council. Caitlin Barabee Smith, Historic Preservation Planner. Would you prefer a quick summary of this item tonight, or would you like to jump directly into questions?
Counselor Gosa?
Why don't you a quick summary, and in particular, do you have, if you can project some of the pictures, that'd be great.
No problem. Give me one moment here. One moment, thank you. All righty.
Okay.
Can you all see that up on the small screen? So thank you for letting me provide a summary of the Marshall House Development Plan with 5 major variances tonight. The Marshall House is currently located at 1133 Oak Street. It was originally located at 134 12th Street, just around the corner. In March of 2024, developers purchased the parcel at 134 12th Street and moved forward with redevelopment of the lot, requiring on their end relocation of the historic Marshall House. We were really grateful to work with those developers, and they did contribute in the cost to help temporarily relocate the Marshall House to 1133 Oak Street. 1133 Oak Street is owned by Overlook Development. That is part of a condo plat with the River House condominium unit. So that condominium also includes the Smell That Bread structure at the corner of 11th and Oak Street. As you have all heard, as I've spoken before you, Marshall House is one of our most important historical and architecturally significant structures in the city of Steamboat Springs. It was originally constructed in 1889. We were able to actually uncover new historical information with our chair, Katie Adams of the Historic Preservation Commission. This structure was actually constructed by James Crowell, who is one of our earliest residents of, I guess you could say, currently Moffat County, but what in 1883 was Routt County. So that is new information. And we will be bringing the official naming of the house back to the Historic Preservation Commission in February for final discussion. However, that does not change the architectural significance or historical significance associated. The 5 variances requested through this development plan are front principal setback, varying the standard from 10 feet to roughly 1 foot 3 inches. The front accessory setback, varying the standard from 15 feet, proposed at 1 foot 11 inches. The side principal setback, The standard is set at 10 feet and it's proposed at 5 feet. So that's a 5-foot encroachment. And then parking in the CK2 zone district is required 1 space per 900 square feet, which results in a requirement of 1.02 parking spaces. However, the code requires us to round up, bringing that requirement to 2 parking spaces, of course. They are requesting 0 parking spaces. Parking is a little unique. You'll see that there is a public right-of-way where, in your packet, where the property line jogs. So that is owned by the city. There is an agreement with Public Works and the owners that does allow for the owners and also the 2 rental units of the adjacent building at Smell That Bread to utilize the parking that is located in front of the Marshall House. So that's why they cannot utilize that parking for the operation, which is proposed under restaurant and tavern use, which is a use by right for the Commercial Oak Zone District. So they'll be operating a speakeasy on the main level and then a cigar lounge on the bottom level. Some public comment that has come up in the past has focused on the cigar lounge. It will be fully contained, and then also hours of operation. So you may hear some of that tonight. The 5th and final variance is a water body setback. The standard is 50 feet and it's being proposed at 4 feet 3 inches from the property line. It is consistent with the placement of other properties adjacent and on that side of Oak Street. In your packets, you will see that if they were to build outside of the water body setback, there would be relatively 4.5% building area on that property. So it'd make it pretty challenging. In general, staff does find that this project does meet the criteria for approval, both for a development plan and then individually for each of the variances. We do quite heavily rely on both unnecessary hardship and acceptable alternative, particularly in regards to federal preservation standards for relocation and placement of a historic structure. So the actual positioning of the home both allows it to fit within the lot, stay outside of the floodplain, even though it does encroach in the water body, and it mimics the exact angle and placement of its original historic location. So this allows the property to still continue to be eligible for federal tax credits if they wish to pursue that in the future. To just summarize, this project does further 2, I guess you could say, key initiatives within our newly adopted community plan. Maintain the community and fund the future. So for maintain the community, you have promote compact growth. I think that speaks for itself here, as well as architectural standards and historic preservation. And then for fund the future, it allows the city and the owners to maintain a strong economical partnership. Thank you.
Thank you, Caitlin. Questions for Caitlin?
Yeah. So this is, my questions are more about clarification of the code. So is it use, I think you said it's used by right for the cigar shop and speakeasy. So that's
correct. It's classified as restaurant and tavern use.
Okay. So whatever they want to do there, it's used by right. Okay. Very good. The community code talks about, the front of the building being, engaging that to the street. In this case, the positioning of the house on the lot, basically from the street, you see basically a side of the house, a wall with I think a window. No engagement with the street side. And so you can't even know, you don't even know this is a historic home from that. So what are the historic guidelines here, in particular, the position of this house on this lot? And I understand the challenges, but we are missing the engagement to the street front.
That's a very great question. So we do have commercial design standards for this zone district. However, section 435C of the Community Development Code does exempt historic structures on our local register from adhering to community design standards. The reason being is that we defer to the stricter standard. And so that would be our historic preservation federal standards and then our local historic design guidelines. And so at the federal level, with the Secretary of the Interior standards also noted in the Code of Federal Regulations, which governs our CLG, our Certified Local Government, and our Historic Preservation Program, that would be Section 3667-4H. It's also noted in your packets under acceptable alternative. And it is in regards to mimicking the historic placement of the house. So topography, and if you were to look at where the house is placed along Oak Street, it also mimics its original placement in comparison to Oak Street. So it's that angular twisting of the house. And the actual entry door is still along Oak Street.
The entry door is along.
The entry door to the Marshall House
Is on.
does face Oak Street currently, even though it looks as if the house is twisted. So
Yeah.
we're at an angle.
But from Oak Street, you're going to see you're not going to see the front door, are you?
So from Oak Street, if you look at this upper right image right here. Oh, give me 1 second.
So that is my understanding, that faces 12th Street, though you won't see it from 12th Street because of it, it's on the corner, but.
Sorry. So this image right here in the upper right corner, I'll just enlarge that for a moment. This represents the sidewalk, if you can see my cursor. And then this is Oak Street where my cursor is. And here is the front door. So the actual historic placement of the front doors flanked the bay window. They weren't technically at the quote unquote front of the home. And so this would be your view as if you were walking down Oak Street, not directly in front of the structure, but walking toward the structure.
The bottom line is it meets the state historic standards.
Correct. It does meet historic
Right,
standards.
thank you.
Yes.
That's all.
Yes.
I might just ask a follow-up question on that, just to clarify. I mean, so it meets, is it required? Did you say it's required that the location and the orientation is required for the Federal Register?
Not for the Federal Register, but if the applicant and owner were to move forward with federal commercial tax credits, it's evaluated under the Code of Federal Regulations. Typically, it is not wise to relocate a historic structure. However, they do have provisions that allow owners of the structure to continue to receive tax credits if the relocation mimics the original placement. And so that's what was taken into consideration here. So it was actually quite beautiful that the open and available lot had a frontage on Oak Street and then also backed up to Soda Creek.
Okay, and so is the orientation more specific to the creek then, as opposed, I mean, because I'm trying to think about how it was located on, I mean, you know, the other lot that it was on was different, right?
Yeah, it was slightly different. I would say the orientation is specific to both Oak Street and Soda Creek, and then also the natural topography. And so it does ironically situate itself quite nicely on this lot.
Okay, thank you.
Does anyone else on council have questions? Okay, thank you, Caitlin.
Thank you.
We'll open it up then to public comment. Is there anybody in the audience who would like to make public comment? Come on down.
Good evening, council members. My name's Arianthe Stetner, and I know many of you. I live at 1367 Anglers Drive, and I am delighted to speak in support of the Marshall House project. It represents a very challenging project for a very challenging location. And I commend the owners for figuring out a solution to preserving this important house, one of the few built before 1900 with local lumber, and being able to continue having a useful life for it going forward. Transformed, not a residence anymore, but into a public space that we can all enjoy. It wasn't easy. It was costly. It has taken a tremendous amount of time and, how you say, perseverance and creative thinking. But I am here personally and on behalf of Historic Routt County to say this represents what we want to do with our history whenever possible. So I'm in support of the project, and I hope you will be as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else who would like to make a public comment in the audience?
Thank you. My name is Paula Silverman. My husband and I are owners of the duplex to the west of this development. First, I want to say I'm a proponent of historical preservation. What I'm against is the process it took in this instance. The granting of a special permit for parking, storing of a building in the city limits should never have happened. There was no legal code, specification, or ordinance for such move to happen, yet the waiver of temporary storage was developed. The building was larger than the 3.5% buildable space it was going on to. It was moved and put on cribs as if it was a done deal, done on a handshake and not on precedence. Now there are 5 large variances to be applied for, and there should probably be a 6th. Without one of the variances, it states, the variance will not injure or adversely impact legal conforming uses of adjacent property, or the applicant has accurately assessed and the impacts of the proposed variance and has agreed to mitigate those impacts. And this has not happened. First, our concerns are on the stabilization of ground between the 2 properties, and this hasn't been addressed to us. Noise impact of an evening speakeasy and cigar lounge amenities next to a residential building has not been addressed. Light impact, natural light to our side yard where we do snow storage is no longer there. Smell impact has been addressed, but I have seen many establishments where people go outside to smoke, and this would be an impact. Fire impact, building code of 10 feet off the property line, to my understanding, is to help fire outbreak to slow, spreading the fire to other structures. And then also, what is the purpose of the reconstructed chimney? I've asked this before and it's not been addressed. The 6th issue is the sewer. Section 25127 of the revised municipal code prohibits shared sewer service lines. A separate building sewer line is required for every building. Plans show the sewer for this building will be tapping into another one, not on the same lot. I am really having a hard time understanding when the city is following code. And as it was brought up, the bay windows or the alcove, whichever you want to say, is not facing the street, and that's been the main aspect of what the historical is. It's facing the side of our building, which would only be about 13 feet away with this variance and can't be seen from the road. Any questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
And we want to make sure I'll ask for if there's any more public comment and also if the applicant would like to come down and make a comment as well.
Hi, I'm Kathy Bayman, and my husband Bruce and I live at 1053 Pine Street on the corner of Oak, Pine, and 11th. First, I want to say we very much appreciate that the applicant is saving this historic home. Caitlin has addressed most of our questions already. We do have two remaining concerns. First, since immediate neighbors, including us, are residential inhabitants, we would be concerned if hours were late night, possibly causing lounge patrons to be loud when leaving the establishment. Second, we are concerned with the potential parking variance. Parking during high season is a challenge, and there is frequent illegal parking in this area, too close to the stop sign setbacks, in front of driveway accesses, and in front of the fire hydrant on the corner of Oak and 11th. There is infrequent enforcement for the illegal parking in the area. The variance narrative from the applicant dated October 30th compared their location to that of the businesses on Yampa Street. However, Yampa has ample parking on both sides of the street. There is no street parking on the south side of Oak in front of 1133 Oak Street. The applicant's narrative also notes that their property is well connected to existing bicycle, pedestrian, and public transit. However, in order for pedestrians to access public transit on Lincoln from 1133 Oak, they must leave the sidewalk in front of Smell That Bread on 11th Street, walk in the street across the Soda Creek Bridge, and then through an angled parking space to reach the sidewalk in front of Creekside Patio. Walking on 11th Street is particularly concerning during the dark evening hours of the winter busy season, especially since cars driving down the 11th Street hill from the north don't have a stop sign. I would like to suggest a striped pedestrian walkway that extends south from the 11th Street sidewalk in front of Smell That Bread, continues over the Soda Creek Bridge on 11th Street, and then turns down the side of the angled parking in front of the Creekside Patio to allow pedestrians access to the sidewalk in front of Creekside, where they can then continue safe access to Lincoln Avenue and the public transportation. There's plenty of room to do this next to the most northern parking space in front of Creekside. We also suggest adding more no parking signage, particularly for the intersection setbacks, the driveway setbacks of nearby properties on Oak and Pine, and in front of the fire hydrant on Oak and 11th. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the audience who would like to make a public comment? Would the applicant like to make a comment?
I don't think we have any additional comments to make, but happy to address any more questions that you all have.
Okay, thank you. I don't see anybody online. Okay, with that, we'll close public comment and bring it back to council for deliberations and/or motion. Yes, Councilor Agosta.
Yeah, so some follow-up questions from the community. First of all, the late night use, I know that there's concern about that, but basically it is by code, it's a right by use. So there's nothing that city council can really do about that because it is right by use. So I just want to make sure that we are clear there, that because they're allowed to do anything they want with that, within that. So I just want to make sure that, people understand that. I would like to have, I guess, Caitlin or somebody just address the three, I see there's three concerns, the ground stabilization, fire impact, and prohibits shared sewer line. Can you just comment on those three?
Yes, I'm happy to.
Oh, for a minute. Councilmember Dixon, could you turn your video on, please? Thank you.
Yes, I'm happy to. I may ask Chancey Keenan, the applicant, to come and put some additional context around fire code. As you know, a development plan does go through a lengthy development review team set of reviews. One of those reviewers is Mike Middleton. He is one of our fire chiefs, and so this did pass fire code. All of the walls are presented as being fire rated, and so I just want to be very clear about that. Another reviewer on our team approach to reviewing development plans is Todd Carr, our building official for both Routt County and then also for, of course, the city of Steamboat Springs. And it did also pass building code. And so in terms of grade and fill permitting, that may be required specifically for a foundation-only permit for just the initial placement of the home, or when they move forward into full building permit, that will be reviewed in detail in terms of stabilization of the soil in between both 1148, the duplexes from Paula Silverman, who spoke on this matter, and 1133. You'll also note in the proposed site plan that there is a pretty substantial retaining wall that does address some of the slope that is naturally there, just to help improve the stabilization of the soil. And then in regards to sewer being prohibited on shared sewer lines, yes, that is 100 correct and absolutely true. However, again, this is platted as a condominium. And per the final plat, I believe it is notation number 6. If any development were to occur, any interior lot lines are eliminated, and so therefore it is able to actually connect to an existing sewer line, and that was confirmed with Amber Gregory in Utilities. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Okay. Comments, thoughts?
The only thing I can add is that although we hear variances a lot, and that's sometimes a reason that comes in front of us, this is one of those few applications that, because it's a historic structure, I think I'm fine with the variances. There's no way to build on this lot with a 50-foot setback from Soda Creek. And we know that that code, when I was on planning commission years ago, it was something we were dealing with, water body setbacks. And any new structure that's going up are following the current CDC with those setbacks. And so in some sense, we would have to follow that. But I think this was one of those few cases that in order to preserve this structure, those setbacks need to be, and all those variances actually are justified, in my opinion, based upon the keeping of an historic structure. And we are seeing them less and less. And this one is one of those few that I'm glad that we can at least keep it in our town and actually start using it and let people enjoy the inside. So I'm going to be supporting this project with the variances stated by staff.
Okay. Yes, Councilor Barnes.
I just have 2 questions. I know we're adopting the fire resiliency code. Is that going to be applicable to this project, or is this project coming in just because of the nature of how tight the buildings are together and to address the neighbor concerns? And then one other question, Dan, do we have the right to limit hours of operation under a liquor license?
No, you do not.
Thank you. My name is Chancey Keenan. I'm the project architect with Mountain Architecture Design Group. As far as the fire code goes, we will be required to follow those standards if our building permit is not submitted prior to their adoption in July, I believe. Our hope is to have a permanent foundation constructed under this house to stabilize it prior to that, to pull a permit prior to that. That wouldn't necessarily speak to the fire code. And I would have to look deeper into the Secretary of Interior standards for those resilient materials on the building. But we will have to follow, landscape requirements for that. And we do have a Class A fire rated roof proposed for the design of the project that would simulate historic shingles. But I'll have to look at the wood siding on that.
Okay. Yeah, I don't even think I think you can get variance for the siding, if I remember right. It was just for the soffit vents and for the roofing.
Again, I'll have to look deeper into the Secretary of the Interior standards for those provisions with the fire code specifically.
Other than that, I support.
I'll just clarify that there are a few exemptions for historic structures. And Rebecca Bessie, myself, Todd Carr, and Chief Sarasoli are looking into those. So thank you.
Thanks.
Okay. Any other discussion? If not, would somebody, yes?
No, I guess, I mean, I'll just say, I mean, absolutely support the preservation of the historic structure. I just wish it was on a little different lot. I mean, I do agree with what I think some of the planning commissioners said in terms of this is definitely a square peg in a round hole. But I don't, again, see that for any reason for denial.
Yeah. Okay. Anything from you, Counselor Dixon?
I was just gonna also say with the 5 variances, I really all of them except for one, which I think we've talked about, which was the side setback. A little concerned, but recognizing the size of the lot, and the importance of the historic preservation, as Councilor Bacino mentioned, to me is really the focus. So I'm in agreement with the 5 variances.
Okay.
Move to approve agenda item 4.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion from Counselor Pacino, a second from Counselor Barnes. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Opposed? Okay, motion passes 7-0. Would anyone like to take a quick 10-minute break before we move on? Okay, we will do that. Let's get back at Okay, we're going to move on to item number 7, resolution of the City Council of Steamboat Springs adopting the City of Steamboat Springs Affordable Housing Guidelines. Brad.
I do have a presentation. I assume you want me to kind of walk through the slides.
I think that would be great.
And I will just mention, Gates, Gooding and I sort of prepped the presentation, thinking it kind of covers all 3 of these items that obviously, as you all talked about, are kind of connected to each other. It probably emphasizes the guideline side of things, but you'll pick up on some content that are about agenda items 8 and 9 as well. Let me just share real quick here. So as I mentioned, Joel, you'll hear from me. Gates Gooding is here as well for any questions, particularly as you sort of get through the other items that you want to discuss. Obviously, Dan can assist as well, particularly on the next item. And again, as I mentioned, I'll cover kind of each of them, each of 7, 8, and 9 somewhat together in the slides. So really kind of a basic set of questions for council tonight. You obviously saw this item with a fair amount of detail at your January work session. You also saw it back in December and even July of last year, and essentially sort of slowly building in sort of the amount of detail. You directed staff back in January to come forward with a sort of a dialed in proposal for this pilot program. So that's really kind of what you're seeing this evening. So really just sort of looking to sort of understand whether you support the pilot phase of the project, the affordable housing guidelines, either as presented or with modifications. And then you'll obviously hear some next steps as well, particularly as it relates to some upcoming actions for council. And this sort of alludes to that. This is all probably pretty self-explanatory. You have 1 resolution, which is obviously this item, and then 2 first readings of ordinances that are in your packet that should they move forward, obviously you'd see them at your next meeting a little bit later this month. We covered this back in December, but I'll just sort of note it sort of again. There's kind of the structure here kind of has sort of 3 tiers or 3 pieces that you can see on the slide. The first, it all starts with the deed restrictions that are really obviously included in your packet as the next item. This item is really about those affordable housing guidelines that create that connection between the guidelines which establish policy intent to those deed restrictions, and also those same guidelines really introduce the reality that there will be administrative procedures that get into much more detail in terms of how the program is administered over time. I will generally sort of just cover with the slides here, mostly modifications that were made as a result of council conversation back in January. When you see the document for the guidelines, there's a red line version that's an attachment. There's a clean version that's an exhibit to the resolution. Those include not only modifications based on the conversation you all had with staff back in January, but also legal completed a full review as well. So when you see the red lines, they essentially are coming from both of those sources. In January, you discussed sort of what a change of employment would look like. Think of the scenario where you qualify as a local employee, sort of tethered to the local economy, get a job that's essentially remote in its orientation. How would that be handled from a compliance standpoint? So you can see in section 5.3, change in employment circumstances, that's really where we try to account for that. It really just sort of essentially introduces discretion to evaluate the employment change in context with the broader goals of the program. Similarly, in January, council described or sort of put forth kind of an open-ended question of like, should trusts be eligible owners or buyers of these properties? And similar to what I just mentioned, there was essentially a change to the guidelines that was introduced. That's under section 5.10, trust ownership. Those are really for the conditions that must be satisfied for trust ownership. Again, we can talk about those in some detail as well. Some other sort of updates. You all obviously had this conversation back in on the 13th. We also followed up with the Housing Authority just to sort of download y'all's conversation and direction, and just sort of had a follow-up meeting with Housing Authority staff just to make sure that both organizations remain aligned, particularly on the sort of administrative issues. You can see a few of those updates on the slide here. I think the short version is that really both entities at the staff level understand the importance of continued compliance as it relates to the program-specific deed restrictions as a priority, and will be supported both by annual recertification, but also through the broader set of tools that the Housing Authority already deploys to help manage a portfolio of deed restrictions on behalf of the community. If you have any questions about that, Alyssa Cartmill, I think, is still on the Zoom and can help out with conversations related to that. These are sort of 5 kind of core elements of what was shared with you back in January. The first 2 changed based on your conversation. The last 3 bullets did not, just so you can kind of see them all in one place. Based on your conversation, there was previously sort of a provision that a local employer could participate in the purchase of up to 4 units. That has been lowered to 2 in the pilot program, and it's emphasized to happen later in the pilot program. Really thinking October 1st or later would be the first time we would entertain that type of program participant. Similarly, in your conversation in January, you emphasized this idea of sort of new transaction, new purchases, rather than an existing homeowner getting the sort of monetary incentive to place the restriction on their existing home without a change of ownership. Similarly, so that is still an eligible way that the program's funds can be spent, but has been, again, pushed out to a little bit later as well. And as I mentioned, the last 3 bullets, you all sort of discussed a little bit back in January, but really didn't arrive at direction to change anything. So it's really the same as presented in January. You also talked a little bit about program outreach. Obviously, a really critical component here is to get the word out. I think we probably even mentioned this in January. We're doing sort of informal outreach now. Realtors, I've had other folks that sort of reached out. The word is already beginning to be out about this a little bit. In particular, I've heard from a lot of folks who just see this as an opportunity to bring people into the buyer pool that probably have not seen an option to enter home ownership in this community. So the word is sort of getting out organically, but obviously as we get to, if we get to a place where essentially the program is launched, we obviously will double down on those outreach activities, particularly when we have not only obviously council approval on this, but when we have the sort of administrative procedures dialed in a little bit. Really want to make sure we're really clean on what the intake process looks like, to call it something, but also all steps that a participant would go through as they participate in the program. Make sure we really understand that. To be fully transparent, oftentimes pilot programs like this, or any pilot program, oftentimes their success is really about rollout, and so we want to just make sure we get that rollout correct. So again, just some examples on the slide that we will use to get the word out. We also I touched on this a little bit already, but as mentioned, we've continued our conversations with the Housing Authority as sort of our recommended primary program administrator. Importantly, we really intend to use, based on our conversations with the Housing Authority, their existing deed restriction implementation plan as the foundation of the program. That will allow us to get the sort of administrative details streamlined and up and running pretty quickly, and hopefully streamline overall program administration as well. We also anticipate in our conversations with the Housing Authority some type of agreement between the organizations. Could be an MOU, could be some other type of agreement, perhaps similar to the model that we've used on the Hilltop development parcel. We have an MOU with the Housing Authority that lays out roles, responsibility, financial and other terms. So that may be a model that we would use to just, again, solidify the agreement between the 2 entities that will have administrative roles. And then you probably know this already, but here's kind of a sense of your next steps. We sort of talked about tonight, and then obviously the second readings for those particular items that would happen a little bit later this month. We are committed, and you saw it in more detail in the January communication form, to regular updates to council in terms of how the program is going. I suspect that will end up looking like also something like either a preliminary or a preliminary and a final evaluation report. That's really kind of what's referred to in that last bullet. Q3 or Q4, if we still have funding to spend, think of that as a preliminary evaluation report. We, in theory, could be spent down or well on our way to spent down if the pilot is overwhelmingly successful. So you can imagine that might look more like a full evaluation report as it relates to the success or challenges of running the pilot program. So again, questions as covered before, really just looking for kind of where you all are on this. I know I've heard a few questions that the council has that may be directed to staff or to Gates or to legal, but I think there's even some policy questions you all should probably just sort of entertain with each other as well, and we can just be a resource in that conversation. So happy to support you all's discussion in any way I can.
Okay. Question for Brad. Yes, sir.
Of course I have questions. Actually, I have a number of questions. So, Brad, maybe the easier ones, or hopefully the easier ones. Program administration costs. What do we expect the cost to be to administer the program, and are those costs rolled in as part of the $3 million?
I'll do the first part first. Based on the appropriation, that's an upcoming item that's rolled into that $3 million appropriation. You all were pretty clear in setting $3 million as the appropriation target just for the pilot. So that is inclusive of the administrative cost. We do not have an estimate from the Housing Authority yet, but we anticipate having one in time for your February 17th second reading. If you end up there, we can actually sort of essentially cost out and give you a sense of what that would look like. In general, it will end up being something like a flat fee just to get to the point where the administrative documents and procedures are in good order, and then essentially a cost per transaction. They have a pretty good sense of what it takes to take a buyer through that qualification process. So we'll just estimate a number of transactions and likely bring forward something that feels like a not to exceed as it relates to those initial administrative costs.
No rough back that, we're not going to hold you to it, just idea of what it is?
I do not have that for you. I apologize.
Okay. All right. Next question. I know you aren't starting this program until October 1st, but basically the documents we're putting together, are meant to run past October 1st. But for existing homeowners, how do we figure out the home value? Is it would it require a bank appraisal to, to understand what we're, what that number is? Because when, obviously when you're buying a home, it's, you're going through a bank appraisal, but how is that set up?
Yeah, so on the first one, Councilor Acosta, the program would actually start as soon as we're ready to go. The October 1st deadline date is really more about, we wouldn't entertain employer purchases or that existing owner deed restriction purchase until after October 1st, to give plenty of time for sort of the new transactions to work through. And to the second question, yeah, the working assumption would be an appraisal of the property would be part of coming up with the value of that existing housing unit.
Okay, and then for an employer, and for an employee, basically just a center user, they have to prove that they are a resident, or they have a job locally, and that they do not have another piece of property someplace else. What about an employer? And so what guidelines, does the employer, it seems like, you can't force them to sell their property if they're, if it's employee housing. So how is that kind of working?
And Gates, this is when you correct me if I'm wrong, but there are general provisions that there could be ownership of business establishments. Most of the restrictions are about ownership of an additional residential property and some other location. So that would allow a local employee who is also maybe runs a business to essentially participate in the program really as an employee, because the way that they are tethered to our economy is through the business that they own, which may include an interest in real property.
Yeah, yeah, again, because this is kind of spinning my head. I could see
Just to clarify.
some abuse. Like I can just open an LLC and I have a business and
So employer participation is subject to staff discretion. And so you can't just open an LLC and then come and expect that we're going to allow you to to participate in the deed restriction program. You have to have a real existing business with your own employees. And the requirement that you don't own any other real estate does not apply to employers. Because an employer has their own house. They're not living in the unit that they're deed restricting. In an employer's case, we're looking to a qualified employee. So they would only be able to rent those units to employees who qualify as, local 30 hours a week, full-time residents.
Yeah. Okay. I'll probably come back with another question for that because I tell you the truth, my head is kind of spinning from the legal standpoint of an employer and that they have different guidelines and rules, so, but let's pause.
Okay, let's see.
Let's pause that. I have,
You got more?
yes, I have, sorry about that. Again, for employer housing, it seems like we need to put up some, affordability guardrails as best I can say. What is affordability guardrail? It'll be like, the employer, cannot charge the employee more than 30% of what their wages, for rent. So, you don't want a situation where an employer brings in some working staff and pays them enough only to pay rent. And so I call this affordability guardrail. And so could we actually put in some of these guardrails to protect the employees?
So that's a perfect example of a question that is probably for your other six folks, maybe more so than for us. We can certainly give you some perspective on that. But as you were gathering, those guardrails are not sort of hard coded into what's in front of you this evening.
Yeah, but we're putting together a program, as I said, that goes beyond October 1st. We may not started to October 1st. So that would be something I'd want to come back to council, and I would like to have some type of affordability guardrails with the employer piece. And in reality, in the back of my mind, I would actually not like to not include an employer component in the pilot program. I like to get us kind of moving. But if we do have an employer portion, I would like to put up some for affordability guardrails. And so that was close my questions.
I recall we already kind of said that we weren't going to have employers until October, right? We weren't going to entertain them, so that gives us some time to figure out those guardrails.
Yeah, that's, so thank you. And that's exactly right. I appreciate the fact that we're giving this to the general public, that maybe that happens with, that's part of discussion. I had a couple questions though, and it's one about the deed restricted owner and owner, owning other properties, taking advantage of this. I think it's paramount that we really do wrap our heads around who's getting the $3 million. And if they own other properties, or what happens if after 5 years, they move to Fort Collins, and do they have to sell this property to another deed restriction? So one of those kind of guardrails are what I'm looking for in this $150,000 gift to buying something. I think it's an important program. I'm really supportive of it, but I have some caution there. The other thing that I really concerned is that as I gone through this, and first of all, the guidelines in the marked up version and everything, where did you get this? Where'd you start from? I mean, there's other people. Is this a boilerplate from another community, or did you guys start from scratch?
It's kind of a combination of really looking at the other programs that are active in Colorado. As mentioned in January, Eagle County's had this for a long time, a lot of communities in that part of the state. So it's sort of an amalgamation of best practice.
It's really well done. I'm just saying is that if you did this on your own, Brad, I'm really impressed. But clearly, there came from some other things, but you coalesced all those documents into one for City of Steamboat, and I appreciate that. And so I was going through the marked up one. There were a lot of things that you had left out, right? And so one of the ones goes into enforcement, which is in your 8.1, and some of those that are going down through there. And what I'm concerned on is what happens when someone gets the money and then blows off the requirements of this, and yet they have this property. What recourse do we have with this property? Can we force them to sell it?
So because we're adopting the Housing Authority's DRIP plan, which is the Deed Restriction Implementation Plan, we will likely adopt some of their administrative practices. And the way their program works is you have a cure period of 6 months. So if we find that you own a deed restricted unit and you move out of the county and buy another house someplace else, and you're leasing the house here, but you own other property, now you're not in compliance with the program anymore. YVHA's procedures give people a 6-month period to cure. So you have to sell that other house, or you have to list your local unit on the market before that 6-month deadline.
And if they don't, what happens?
Then the
Slap
city
them on the wrist and say, hey, you got another 6 months? I mean, where's the teeth in this from that perspective?
There's a damages provision in the deed restrictions, $300 a day. And there's also a provision in the deed restrictions that we can seek, legal and equitable remedies. So injunctions in the court. So like you get a court order saying you can't occupy the property because you're not a qualified household, for example. It's getting a court to order the property to be sold is a little bit more complicated. I'm not sure that we could get that far because
like an HOA would do if they're out of their.
Yeah, it's just hard. A court doesn't like to issue orders that, that aren't really objective and they can't control, and saying you have to sell the property, but, that depends on finding a buyer and, macroeconomic conditions. So I don't expect us to go down that route, but fines and damages, I think, would be the most obvious approach, and possibly injunctive relief if the
So you feel that there's enough teeth in this, the way it's written, Dan?
Yes, I think that we have a couple of different options that would be effective if we got a property owner that just didn't want to comply.
So I think that, it may be wise that we go through this process to make sure we market and tell people what are their enforcement that they're about ready to sign up for. And as long as people know what the rules of engagement on the front end, quite vivid and very simplified, I'm fine with the program.
There's typically an acknowledgement process to make sure that potential buyer understands the terms of the deed restriction. So that's the awareness phase is really important in that qualification process.
That's the only questions I have right now. Thank you.
Okay. Yes.
The only question I had is, I think we settled on that it had to maintain residency for 9 months out of the year. I was wondering if anybody would want to move that up to 11 months. Just seems like a lot of latitude for somebody to move out and rent the place for the winter season or the summer season, when that's really not the aim at all. And I don't know if you have any pushback against shortening that time period up, or anybody else does. And then I just had.
Turn on your mic here.
Am I on?
There we go. Back to when we had that discussion, again, what were we trying to solve for by having 9 months versus 12 months?
I mean, they can go on vacation, they can do that stuff, but not to be able to sublet the property.
We were trying to solve for essentially the way I don't know, this is my words more than Gates, like making this work for as many buyers as possible. Like think of an educator that maybe can take most of the summer and be somewhere else to do caregiving or whatever, to just give enough allowance that people understand that they can be elsewhere for some amount of time. I was thinking about this in my past year. I mean, I I have a local job. I was probably in town 10 and a half months. It's like, it's not that hard to find yourself. To Councilor Barnes's point, a lot of that is essentially pretty standard reasons as to why you would be gone, but it was to really just make it clear to potential program participants that there is some leniency and expectation or understanding that you can be connected to the local economy and still be gone for a couple months out of the year.
We just put a provision of no subletting.
I guess, may I chime in? When I think about economically, you would never want to participate in this program because you're like limiting a financial asset. So I feel like if you were renting this out for 3 months, it would be to supplement your income, so you could continue to live. Like I understand where you're coming from, but words are failing me. It almost seems like the incentive there doesn't exist. Like if somebody needs to rent their house out, they're an educator and they need to rent their house out for 3 months. I feel like in a way it's not so that they can make a ton of money. It's so that it can help subsidize their lives so they can get by rather than live a lavish life. Am I making any sense?
You are. That's just, and again, we should stick with questions, but that's one scenario. Certainly for that one scenario, there are 10 other scenarios. So I was just going to ask the question, to the extent that you added the language kind of about the discretion, right, in terms of the employer, perhaps could there be language that could be added kind of as, to the discretion of the administrator of the program so that they can take into consideration, one-off scenarios, but make sure that we're not creating any sort of hole. Would that be problematic from your perspective?
I'm not hearing anything that sounds problematic. No.
So more a policy question.
I think there's a couple things here, Brad, that I wanted to ask you a question. It's a pretty simple one, I hope. But I also wanted to say that this is a test, this is a pilot, so it's not going to necessarily be 100% perfect. But you've also used a lot of best practices from other municipalities around here that have done this for many, many years, some of them. And so I feel relatively comfortable around that. When you say 15 or 25%, up to 150 or 250, let's take an example there of a home that's $1 million, right? So they could get 150. Or a home that's $2 million, they could get 150. Now, is there any variables that determine how much money they get besides the 15% of the value of the home? Like location or size or anything like that? Or is that just the only variable? It's just 15% times the value?
And in part because those variables are accounted for in the value of the property.
Okay.
Condition, age, location, all those things obviously are influence the value of the unit.
Okay, so if you're making trade-offs between properties and just trying to decide one versus another, don't those other things come into play then, the location or the size or those other things come into play? I mean, how do you make decisions? Are you just assuming you're just going to first come, first serve it, and when the 3 million's gone, it's gone?
The working assumption is for this pilot program, it is first come, first serve. They obviously have to work all the way through a transaction, right? Through a sale. So like, they have to have a lender that's willing to lend to them, and there are multiple steps that everyone obviously goes through as they purchase property. So they'd have to work all the way through those steps to really essentially receive a commitment of that subsidy.
Okay, but when they start that process and they're applying for a mortgage and everything else, they have to include this 150,000 in there to get it. So once they've started that process, it is assumed that they will be, get the deed restriction if the mortgage lender approves?
For the purposes of sort of keeping a relatively accurate accounting of, let's call it, transactions in process, I suspect the city and the housing authorities, our program administrator, will have a sense of like what is in process. And if we were at a point where everyone worked all the way through the process, that would mean fully extinguishing the pilot funds. We would probably say, let's not onboard anyone into the program right now, because obviously that's not necessarily fair to that person to give them the expectation that there may be essentially a city subsidy associated with that transaction.
Okay. Thanks.
Hmm.
Any other questions for Brad?
Yeah, I have a question. I said this as an assumption, but I just want to confirm. I'm having a hard time imagining a place where there's some secret arbitrage or perverse incentive in this. Is that right? Or why would I be incentivized to price cap my house or to limit it to resident? Like we keep talking about these scenarios of what if someone abuses the program, but why would I possibly want to participate in this unless I actually needed it?
I'll do my best to like respond to that. I think that this has been structured to essentially not create a situation where there is some speculative cottage industry where someone is out there buying up units using this particular subsidy to allow them to, let's call it amass a portfolio of deed restricted units. Like there are guardrails in place to prevent that. At least from the perspective of obviously looking at peer communities and, designing what's in front of you this evening.
I mean,
I have a question.
okay.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
If I got a question. I think you made a comment back to the issue of occupancy. I thought in here there was a requirement basically that you had to live in the home. Is it still in there? And I just missed it, the 3 years?
Correct.
Right. And then after that, it could be rented out.
To an eligible occupant.
Right. And
Same
again,
deal,
back
tethered to the 30 hours a week.
Yeah. And is there any sort of price cap, kind of again, back to our rental caps, right? I mean, in terms of it's a qualified employee, right, or a qualified local resident workforce employer or employee, right? Is there any sort of no cap on that, right?
As presented this evening, there are no rental price caps that are included. And just so you understand the logic of that, that's because we view this as a market-based solution.
Right.
It is connected and tethered to someone who works locally, whose wage and salary profile is connected to sort of the local economy. So that would suggest that for that unit to compete on the open market, it would have to be rented essentially at market rather than above.
Okay. And then the next question is back to the fact that we know, right, that we have a lot of people who work in this community that live right in our outlying communities. Just a question about how administratively, if somebody does say they own in Craig or South Route or North Route and want to participate in this program, talk a little bit about that curing timeframe. So again, from the perspective of I find a house, it's going to take me a little while potentially to sell the other house. How do we make sure that we don't inadvertently make those folks ineligible because of the administrative aspect of the process?
Gates sort of gave kind of an overview of generally how the Housing Authority handles this. And Lala, if you're online and willing to unmute, you may be our best resource to answer that question.
Yeah, hello everyone. So currently, what we would do is we would just work with them with an active real estate listing and kind of stay on top of them. Obviously, if a house doesn't move in the 6-month time frame that we currently have set, there's certain things that we look at. Have you sat down with your realtor for a marketing strategy? Have you tried to do price reductions? Have you made a good effort to sell that property? If they haven't, I think then you would just say, sorry, you didn't actively try to cure this. But we try and work as best we can with everybody, understanding that their circumstances are different and the market's constantly changing.
Okay. Thank you. And then maybe one more question, just as back to kind of the layering. So to the extent that YVHA has a down payment assistance program, none of this precludes any of that, right?
No, we were in a presentation last week, and the general feeling is you could actually layer these things with each other. I have described this program in some ways as a jumbo down payment assistance program. So yes, there is certainly a pathway to essentially bring multiple, let's call them down payment assistant programs together to help the buyer.
All right, thank you.
So this, just Cottonwoods is going up for sale. They're already deed restricted, not part of this program.
That's correct, because to participate in this program, you're essentially taking an unrestricted unit and through that transaction, creating a restricted unit.
Okay, so from a individual who works in town, has been here for 15 years, would love to buy a place in Steamboat, not in Hayden or Stagecoach. That individual finds a property, let's just say Walton Village condos for $390,000. 15% of that value can be used at this program if they deed restrict that property. So what this is in essence doing is it's allowing a local workforce person who never thought they could own a piece of property in Steamboat be able to have a little bit more, 15% more buying power, right?
Correct.
And then they would intentionally deed restrict this property. So what we're doing in sense is giving them home ownership, understanding there's caps and other things that go along with it. But this is a person who's housing insecure that probably would never think of owning something in the first place. And now we're letting them buy something in Steamboat. Is that the essence of
Correct.
what demographic would be for this?
And in similar to Cottonwoods, it benefits the next buyer and the next buyer and the next buyer and the next buyer because there's now a restriction on the property.
Okay.
And that's only at 15%, there's no cap.
Understood, but there's two different options. I'm just giving that one as an example.
Right.
My hunch is that in particular, this will bring forward buyers that maybe let's call it the $550,000 to $850,000 price tag just feels absolutely 100% out of reach, in part because of the monthly rent payments that they're paying right now doesn't allow them to save a down payment. They actually could probably handle the note because it probably corresponds relatively closely to what their market rate rent is, but it's that down payment and building that nest egg is really the primary challenge.
Okay, thank you.
Just on the price cap one, walk me through the $1 million purchase price. They get 250,000 on that. Then what does the value of that property get deed restricted at? The 750?
I believe it would be, is it seven? Yeah, 750.
And,
Yep.
and banks don't have a problem with that because they'd be then lending 100% LTV.
Yeah, and I mean, again, this has obviously been tried and tested in other Colorado communities. There hasn't been really specific lenders may not like it as much as others. You know, they all kind of have their own profile of how they do that. But obviously, there's successes around other communities in Colorado.
I was just gonna mention one idea of, and I don't know if I've read it someplace or I just made it up in my head, but change of employment, letting them buy out the deed restriction for now market value, allowing them to then, in essence, keep that home, but buy out the deed restriction, returning the money back into a pilot program. I don't know if that's an option for someone rather than making them sell their home because they no longer qualify for it.
That's one of those. It's a question towards your group rather than to me.
And maybe one more question, just, and I think more just for all of us, right? I mean, in terms of kind of the in perpetuity issue, right? I mean, there's still that language in there about permanence. And basically, I think somebody had to ask early on, there's really no way to bind future councils, right? Dan, in terms of coming in again and sweeping off the deed restrictions.
And blame it on the housing authority.
No comment on that. There's no way for you to restrict the authority of a future council to release a deed restriction other than what's in the charter, which is basically it has to be an ordinance. You know, if you wanted to do something like that, you'd have to bring another party in that had some kind of an interest in the deed restriction, and that would have the power to block a release. But then how do you control that party's motives and interests in the future? So there's no real obvious way to do that.
Okay, Councilor Dixon has her hand up.
Brad, can you take the slide down? Excuse me.
Councilor
Hi.
Dixon? Yeah, there you are.
Yes, yeah, hi. Hi, everyone. Brad, thanks. That was really comprehensive overview, and thank you for all of the questions from my fellow council members. I was leaning into those questions as well for possible loopholes, I think is what I've been hearing. And while I want to believe in the best of everyone, when you involve money, we just have to make sure this is really solid and tight. Brad, my question is on the guidelines document. 5.2, authorized eligibility categories. Number C is person with a disability, which I love and completely support. One thing that is missing in here, I'm not sure if it shows up somewhere else. What is the definition or criteria for a person with a disability? Is that something that will be defined or something that we'll use to help define that?
Councilor Dixon, that would be sort of covered in the administrative procedures, would sort of lay out those definitions.
Okay. Perfect. Thanks. That's it.
Okay. Any other questions?
Yes. So Counselor Barnes actually brings up an interesting question. And that was surprise. If let's take that $1 million home. If someone comes in $1 million home, purchases $1 million home, goes in this program at the cost restrictions and gets $250K for that, we are valuing that house at that point then at $750. Now, will the banks, it seems like the banks would look at that and say, oh, since you have this deed restriction on this house you're buying is not $1 million, this house is buying is $750. And so we need a down payment of 20%, which is $150K. And if they didn't, and so we've been saying here that this gives them a down payment. Well, the bank was say this is worth $750, so I need a down payment on $750 of $150K. If they didn't get in the program, the down payment would have been $200K. And so it's a $50K, she's either choice between $150K versus $200K. Howard, I can't imagine a bank, saying, yeah, you're fine with just putting, taking this money and putting that as your down payment because the value of that property has just decreased. So
Does the bank look at it like when it comes out of foreclosure, the deed restriction gets wiped so they get the full value?
Well, there are provisions related to foreclosure and the deed restrictions that include, something equivalent to a right of first refusal by the city to purchase the property. How individual lenders sort of think about what it may meet, what they would require or like to see for, let's call it the additional down payment, 5%, 10%, 15%. I mean, I suspect perhaps, each individual lender may have a different approach there.
Could we
Gates, I don't know if you've got
ask that question to or other,
certainly our peers. Yep, we can ask that.
Yeah, I would like to find out what they're,
We were mentioning to Councilor Gary earlier, all our peers have been amazing and they all are more than willing to take multiple phone calls. So Gates and I have no problem following up with those types of questions.
Okay. The other question I would ask relating to that is the assessed value of the property then in terms of taxation. And if it's $1 million property, but now it's $750, is it still assessed at $1 million?
It'll be recorded with the assessor, so I suspect it essentially will, and there'll be a recent sales transaction, so it'll ratchet down to $750 in that example.
It would.
Yep. I mean, we mentioned this a little bit in January. Yeah. Those 15 and 25% are rules of thumbs, but they have also been generally proven out in the market over time in terms of market value versus restricted value. Rule of thumb. You can take 15% off of the market value of a property that includes just that sort of employee restriction on it, and 25% with the price cap. And it has been sort of proven over time that that's a really good, useful rule of thumb there.
So what you're saying is that if usually assessed value of a home is based on sales in the neighborhood. That's how the assessor basically assesses the value of your home. So they would look at they would look at other homes in the neighborhood and then lop off 15% or 25% if it was deed restricted. Is that what you're?
I mean, I don't want to get into the assessor's business, but they would understand that like there is a restriction recorded on the property, and therefore they would again likely apply their own rules of thumb in terms of how they value that restriction or reduce the value of that property based on that restriction.
Okay.
I love the program. It's perfect.
Okay. If there's no more questions, There's no more questions. Let's open it up to public comment. Is there anybody in the audience who would like to make a public comment? Is there anybody online? Doesn't appear to be, so we'll close public comment, bring it back to council for further deliberation.
Well, I mean, hey, first of all, Brad, seriously, thank you. And Gates, you guys have done a great job getting us something that's unique. And we know that our city is lacking in deed restrictions across Colorado. So I'm encouraged that we're coming up with, again, more toolkits. The one thing that I just would like to present up to all of us on council is that one program does not define our affordable housing solution. This is another arrow in our quivers, right? We need to have a lot of options for our citizens to take advantage of. And it's the same thing when we get to the Brown Ranch as far as what product, whether it's a trailer or a tiny house or a single family home or a condo. People want options, and that's what we're slowly building is options for our community. $3 million seems like a lot. We're blessed with having a 9% sales tax that's going toward it right now. And I think that for me, as it's written, I did have some concerns. You've clarified some things, both you and Dan, as far as the teeth in the enforcement part of this. But I can't justify not going forward. It really is something that there's nothing that would keep me from risking $3 million for the favor of our community that could benefit from it. I know people that have been here for 20 some years, and this may absolutely get them to buy a piece of property in Steamboat, which they never thought could happen, you know? And so, but I do want to consider, you know, when we talked a little bit about outside the boundaries of Steamboat, right? There's some viable properties at Stagecoach Townhomes, 3-bedroom units that would be a great workforce housing. How do we address those properties that have been out there that are in the price range that are still between that $500,000 and $800,000? That's just, I can't save enough money to get that down payment, but I can afford the monthly mortgage. And so I just kind of think that we don't have a lot of inventory that would make a difference in this town. We probably could see what happens. But everything that's going on the market is already deed restricted. And so we really need to kind of consider what are the boundaries of this program, and is that a way to get us a little further rubber band around this? Just a discussion.
Yes, Councilor Gary.
I did have the opportunity to follow up with one of the people from Eagle County. And again, kudos to Gates and to Brad for all the work that they have done. And I think, again, just reinforced through a lot of the conversations that, yes, a lot of our peer communities have deed restriction programs, but they're always refining them is what I have learned in terms of my conversations that, you know, they've done things but it's always a work in progress. And certainly in terms of talking with the staff person from Eagle, she was real strong about saying this is a funnel, right? So in terms of when you look at kind of the administrative aspects, you want to make sure that you're funneling the criteria so that you're getting the right the people that we're targeting in terms of for home ownership, and not to create a sieve, right? So that we're basically trying to put your finger in a hole. So kind of back to why should the language be as tight as possible and restrictive is exactly that. And particularly, you know, it's like, because you never know, right, until you get into it in terms of what situations there are. So similar to your comment about 9 months versus 12 months, why not say 12 months and give a kind of some discretionary language so that the default is 12 months, but there's discretion to say, okay, you've got a hardship or, you know, need to go home for 3 months to take care of an ailing parent, that, you know, you've got that kind of discretion. So really kind of focusing, you know, in on that. And I would say too, I would lean and would hope that we would all lean in terms of being more restrictive, because once we put that deed restriction on, we can't change it, right? We can change things going forward. So when we get to October and we reevaluate the program, we can say, ooh, maybe we do need to tighten it. But at that point, if we put deed restrictions on 5 homes, they're under that, they're under that blanket. So I would say, I would say let's start out more restrictive and go toward being, and so that we can get some information. And one of the things that we've asked to check with Eagle County is, I think she said, but I don't know that we found the language, is so in that scenario where somebody lives in the house, occupies the house for 3 years, and then maybe takes another job somewhere else, I believe they capped rent at the mortgage rate plus the HOA plus $25.
Right? Amen.
So, I mean, I think that would be something to take into consideration as well.
Yeah.
So those would be kind of, I think, in
Get
terms.
the equity growth, even though it's capped or not capped. But
Right.
That's interesting. Thank you.
Right. And again, with the goal, what is our goal here, right? Our goal is to try to make sure that we incentivize home ownership, and certainly making sure that anybody that lives there is a workforce.
Counselor Swintek, you have something?
I was just going to say this is a rare moment when another counselor's comments have changed my mind. So thanks. Appreciate it.
Okay.
Well,
It's not unprecedented, but congratulations.
I don't know.
no, I like what you're saying about being more restrictive, because in a pilot sense, if we just open up so wide, we're not going to get the learning we want either. And so I would agree with that about being more restrictive.
And if we are too restrictive, we'll know pretty quick.
Right, we will. Counselor Dixon.
So I agree with everything that's been said. I totally support this program. I appreciate staff for looking to other communities to find best practices and what they're doing. And I'm in the middle about being more restrictive. Counselor Gary and others, I agree with that 3-year suggestion. If they move and they rent it, we cap it to the mortgage plus HOA plus whatever. That I can get on board with. The other comments around telling people they must be here for 12 months out of the year, I say this with kindness, but it's starting to feel a little bit like classism. That we all have this privilege of owning or renting places, but yet we can go on vacation, or if we have a medical condition that we have to leave for several months, that we're just able to do that. And so I don't love the saying the 12 months, 11 or 10. I like the 9 months. This allows folks to actually also have lives outside of just working in Steamboat, that they can maybe go on vacation, maybe they can go visit family. They have medical appointments outside of Steamboat. They have to take care of a loved one. It's just feeling again, a bit like classism when we really start restricting it. So I get we want to protect it, and I think there's a balance though.
Yeah, I guess I'd love to understand that better. I have lived here 30, almost 25 plus years, and have never been out of the county for 3 months. Right? So I mean,
I have.
I need to understand that better. But, right?
I have.
Right.
For cancer. I mean, like, it happens. Like, everyone has their own individual experience. And why was having them justify? Why would I have had to justify I am going through cancer treatment? Like, that would have been the last thing I would have wanted to do. Or that if you have a loved one in a different state who needs care, it's feeling very restrictive, moving it down.
Did you rent your house for 3 months while you were gone? I mean, my comment was more about subletting than leaving and going on vacation for 3 months. I mean, and who's going to track anybody leaving and going on vacation for 3 months? But if there's a website trolling and sees somebody's deed-restricted house up for, rent, then that's probably going to set off a red flag. So it was more about subletting than it was about trying to track anybody for staying in town for 12 months.
Yeah, and I hear what you say, and I certainly understand that, and I guess what I'm focused more on is just trying to eliminate any sort of abuse.
Yeah. And I think there's a balance, and I think that's what that we're talking about here. And I'm thinking about other, Commissioner Macy's just did a house swap for a month from her house and she was able to vacation in Australia and didn't cost her anything except a plane fare. Why shouldn't someone be able to do, a trade-off like that, So I see a 9-month option,
Can we, can you pull up, Brad, the city council discussion questions? Because we're really into them right now.
Oh, yeah.
And so I think we should kind of zero in on these. Okay, so I think where we are is we're talking about modifications or as presented. So if we start with, does city council support the pilot phase affordable housing guideline modifications as outlined in the communication form? So the first question is, do we like the modifications that have been outlined from last time in January to now? And then are there additional modifications that we want to suggest? And then are we ready to adopt them as presented or with the modifications? So I think the real question is how we feel about modifications. First of all, that Brad and Gates have come up with, and then we can discuss if we want any additional modifications.
Well, I'm fine with the way that they presented and already went through this from our January meeting. So we've kind of fine-tuned some of those modifications. So what they presented here for me is getting my support moving forward with this pilot program.
Okay.
Are you open to modifications?
I'm open to any modifications, absolutely. I'm just saying is that the framework that we have a second reading and we need to go through this. But I think right now, we're kind of coming close. We're circling the runway.
What are the modifications that I'm hearing the 9-month piece could be anywhere from 9 to 11 months, but I'm hearing that piece. Are there other modifications that people are suggesting?
I thought it was 9 months in the way you've written it, Brad and Gates. I thought it was 9 months now. It is. Okay, it is 9 months now. So the question is, do you want to make it more restrictive? I'd say they've done a great job taking our feedback. So first, I want to be clear about that. I love what you've done. I'm amazed at what you've done in this short period of time. So I appreciate it. And so I'm good with the 9 months. The piece that
well, let's stick on the 9 months for a minute, and then we'll move on to another piece here. Because is everybody okay? We need to reach a recommendation around the number of months.
I'm fine with the 9 months if that's a sticking point.
I don't want to draw this out longer. I would support a lengthy amount, what Councilor Gary had said, 11 months, something like that, but at the discretion of staff. I totally see where Councilor Dixon is coming from. However, I also think these are public funds that are being put towards it's a unique situation. So yes, I agree with that feeling of classism. However, these are public funds, and therefore we just want to make sure that they're being properly managed. So I would support a longer period of time, like 11 months, but at the discretion of staff.
Would you support 10 months?
Sure.
A compromise from 9, 11 to 10.
Sure.
Anybody else would support 10 months?
I mean, I would. As I say, I totally understand where Councilor Dixon, your point. Just trying to find a balance.
Okay. Councilor Dixon? Well, how many people thumbs up on 10 months? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
I don't know it.
Councilor Dixon, are you thumbs up on 10 months?
No, I'm still with 9.
Okay, so we have 2 at 9, 5 at 10.
Question?
Next one would be the mortgage plus HOA plus $25 if you rent it.
So can you say that again in terms of what's the scenario?
If I'm going to rent out my unit, it can only be rented at the cost of my mortgage plus HOA plus $25.
To a eligible.
After 3 years.
Yeah, and I think that's back to the language of you have to have lived in it 3 years. That's the threshold, right? But
After 3 years.
yeah, and we can do that subject to,
And here's the thing, you can rent it as long as you don't go rent it to someone qualified and then go to Florida and buy another property. See, there's where I'm having the problem about this enforcement thing. And so someone lives in it for 3 years and they retired and now they want to rent it to another workforce person who's in Routt County, but they're only going to rent it for mortgage HOA $25. Are they allowed to buy property somewhere else in the country and still be part of this program?
We'll answer that in October.
Okay.
I'd also think the incentive there for the tenant would be, I would want to enforce that. I'm paying all of this, but I don't own it. If I were that tenant, you would probably know where you're sending your checks to your landlord. I feel like there's some baked in incentive there, basically.
No, I asked the question because it just came to my head, that's all. Settle my spirits, guys.
Okay, so Brian, why don't you repeat what you're asking?
I would recommend that we set a rent cap if you rent it after 3 years to the cost of the mortgage plus the HOA plus $25.
Okay.
and just a point of clarification. It's not contingent upon having another job and leaving the community. Right, the 3 years. You just have to live in it 3 years?
So you have to intend to live here for at least 3 years when you participate in the program. Yeah.
Okay, and it's irregardless of the condition under which you move.
Correct.
Okay, all right. And we should probably say, this is from my conversation with the staff, so we probably want to confirm if there's any, I guess, issues with that.
But the only point I was going to raise is all that we need to put into the guidelines is that the city has the authority to limit the rent when someone moves out of town after that 3-year period and decides that they want to rent it. I don't know if it's worth looking into this at all before we say you can only charge an additional $25. I mean, we hear the intent loud and clear, but if we could just grant the city the authority to limit the rent level, then we can go and look at the mechanics and figure out exactly what that level should be.
I agree. All right. How many thumbs up on Gates's recommendation? Okay, good. Any other modifications?
Yes. I'd like to have affordability guidelines for the employer. I'm really uncomfortable with, the potential of abuse at that level.
Under this, what we just talked about.
Can I make a suggestion? And apologies, Casey and I haven't talked about this. If the employer piece is making folks uncomfortable, just take it out of the pilot program.
I would like to take it out of the pilot program. Maybe.
I understand that it feels slightly different than the larger intent. I think there is a bank shot sort of benefit, but if it's making folks a little squeamish in terms of how that actually fits within the overall mechanics of the program, I think we can just remove it. But that's just one solution.
I would like to advocate for it. We heard Julia come in, the owner of the bagel shop, and that is a great example. She was saying that's a perk that she could offer to her employees to keep and retain really good talent. I understand that we think about a really bad situation, but I think we would be hurting our small businesses in town.
So
I just need guardrails if we do it.
I used the word earlier, risk $3 million. I'm willing to risk $3 million for this pilot program because the benefits are worth trying for our community. And if by October, it's just not viable for some locals, we still want to have this bank shot that he's saying that could still help our community. So I don't have a problem baking that into it with that kind of month delay success because it says, okay, by this time we can start doing it and maybe some employers would. So I'm fine with the employer purchase of one as long as, again, I just see this as a pilot program, and if we find it being abused, we take it out on the next one, and we risked $3 million. I mean, it's not going to be all going to employers.
Well, we're not risking $3 million because we're not going to do just the employer.
Exactly, that's my point.
So
It's not going to happen like that.
Did we cap it at just 2 units anyways for employers?
2 units, yeah.
4, yes.
We're really.
There's a few guardrails.
500,000.
Wouldn't this fall under the category of what we just talked about, that if you're renting out your unit, the city has the ability to limit what it's rented for?
We could add that language as well. And I do want to say that not having these rent caps in there within the current draft speaks to the market-based philosophy of this program. The assumption is that we are in a tight labor market, and if you want to keep good employees, you have to treat them right because everybody has plenty of options to move around. We did discuss limitations that we could put on the employers. I mean, you don't want to be able to fire someone and force them to move out the next day. But at the same time, we don't want to tell an employer that if they lease to their employee, then that employee gets a guaranteed year or something, even after they quit. So we might find like 60 days as a nice middle solution there. But again, like everything else in the program so far, it's been the market-driven philosophy. And then we adjust as necessary based on what we find.
Yeah. Let me ask my council members this question. If we are going to restrict what an employee can charge for their deed restricted home, why wouldn't we also restrict what an employer can charge for that? So that seems, yeah, so I'm confused because we're restricting one and not restricting the other of what they can charge.
Incentives are different. An employee renting, if I rented my house to you, I don't care about you showing up to work. All I want is you to pay your rent. Whereas an employer, their incentive is that's my employee and I'm trying to retain them. I don't want to bankrupt them. I want them to come to work well rested and happy so they're continuing to perform their job. There is a totally different incentive.
And there's the other piece of it. Which employees would you offer something like this to?
Someone you want to keep.
Your best employees,
Yeah.
the ones you don't want to leave. So
That is the difference, is there is a totally different incentive structure baked in.
Interesting. Thank you for that perspective.
okay, where are we on this one? The employer piece. Do you want to leave it as is?
I would vote to leave it as is.
How many thumbs up on leaving it as is? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5.5? 5.5.
Vote a vote.
I hear what you're saying.
Can't
All right.
abstain. Come on.
5.5. Okay, so we got that. Anything else?
So this is not a change, but I do think it's important to just reiterate it, and that goes down to setting the expectations of what this program will do. And this is the action item for Gates and Brad to basically ask, the other communities this aspect of, if I buy $1 million home, I need, without this program, I need 200K and for a down payment or potentially with this program, I still need 150K. It's only a 50K difference. So I used to think of this in my mind that this was the down payment, that this allowed me to now get into a home because this is the down payment for the home. It's not that case, not at all. Or at least it doesn't appear to be. And so I am concerned about how we communicate this. And that this is, but I'm also very curious what the other communities, experience in this area. This is not present us moving forward, but it's something that I think is important.
What you're saying is you really want to understand the messaging of this and how it persuades people.
But I'm also
to make decisions that they think are in their best interest. So,
well, I am concerned that we're not enabling people that we think we're enabling. That's why I'm concerned.
I'm understanding the question, and we'll reach out to our peers to understand this. Is essentially what other funds does a buyer have to show up with at essentially closing to make this work from the lender's perspective. So we will try to get kind of a ballpark on that so that we can share that back with you all.
And yeah, that would be great. Okay, back to that sheet, Brad. So are we done with number 2? Would city council like to see additional modifications? Are we done with that one? Okay, so we're on to question 3. Is city council ready to adopt the guidelines as presented or with modifications? So we'd say, is city council ready to adopt the guidelines with modifications that we just covered?
Yes.
Thumbs up. Okay, good. And 4th question, does city council support the next steps as presented?
Yes.
Brad, do you have those for us? Do you remember what they are, Michael?
They're on the slide. Second readings and obviously they will come back with really as we get up to speed, we'll come back with reports. And then as I mentioned, let's call it a couple quarters from now, something that could be a full evaluation of the pilot program or preliminary report.
Okay, so does somebody want to make a motion to approve the resolution of the City Council of Steamboat Springs adopting the City of Steamboat Springs affordable housing guidelines with modifications?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Councilor Pacino, second by Councilor Swintek. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0.
Was that?
And I'll just mention the sort of the 2 things I will bring back for your next meeting is what we just talked about, just generally what we understand what a buyer has to bring to closing in addition to the subsidy. And then obviously that not to exceed amount for the administrative cost for the housing authority. So we'll make sure you see those at your next meeting.
Okay.
Thank you, Brad.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, item number 8 is the first reading of an ordinance approving City of Steamboat Springs deed restriction purchase program agreements. Brad.
I have no formal presentation, but I can give you some quick notes. And also make it very clear that your city attorney is here for any questions that you may have. As described tonight, and then obviously back in January, like these deed restrictions are essentially the anchor or the foundation of the program. So clearly you have 2 in your packet tonight associated with the ordinance. They obviously do things like establish eligible households, qualified employees, occupancy and use restrictions, resale restrictions, enforcement and other legal provisions. Hopefully that's all pretty self-explanatory to you. If you did a side-by-side of the 2 deed restrictions, really the only thing the price capped one does that's different is that it sort of produces or provides those resale restrictions in the formula by which you can arrive at essentially that maximum resale value, including how to consider things like capital improvements on the property. As noted in the ordinance that's in your packet, city charter requires acquisition of city interest in real property to be approved by ordinance, hence the ordinance. One program administration note that I want to just sort of mention, I don't think it's in the memo, but really what you're doing tonight is approving sort of these mainline, to call out something, restrictions. We anticipate that as the program goes forward and there are individual transactions that result in individual purchases of restrictions, we would come back to you with future ordinances that are essentially batch ordinances that let you see a full accounting of all properties that have been purchased through the program. So you're really just doing the deed restrictions tonight, but we would obviously keep you abreast of future transactions so that you, by ordinance, are acknowledging those transactions. Both the restrictions in your packet have been reviewed by legal, and so really, Dan, maybe your best resource on any questions related to the restrictions.
Okay, thanks, Brad. Anybody have any questions for Brad or Dan?
I mean, I think the only question I have would just be, obviously, any of the changes we made, you'll change in, you will make the subsequent changes in here. So just if we make a motion, it would be to approve with the modifications.
Yes, I definitely heard one thing that I would like to modify deed restrictions to reflect, and that's the rent cap, if there's going to be one.
Okay, any other questions? If not, we'll open it up for public comment. Anybody in the room or online want to make a public comment? See no one in the room. See no one online. We'll close public comment, bring it back to council for more deliberations or motion.
Move to approve agenda item 8.
Second.
We have a motion by Counselor Pacino, second by Counselor Swintek. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, motion passes 7-0. All right, number 9, first reading of an ordinance approving a supplemental budget appropriation for 2026, usually utilizing short-term rental tax funds to acquire deed restrictions through pilot purchase of deed restriction program. Kim.
Good evening, Council. Kim Weber. So this is a supplemental budget appropriation for $3 million for the pilot purchase program, as well as the administrative costs associated with it, out of the short-term rental tax fund. As of right now, through December of 2025, if you approve this appropriation and with all the appropriations that you've approved, we'll have it right about 21 million in the STR fund through the end of 2025.
Okay.
I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Kim?
Yeah, quick question.
Yeah.
I thought you said that it's going to be 3 million plus the program fees, or is it 3 million including the program fees?
Sorry if I said that. No, it's in the $3 million is inclusive of the
Okay.
administrative fees.
Any other questions? Okay, seeing none, we'll open up for public comment. Is there anybody in the room or online who would like to make a public comment? Seeing none, we'll close public comment, bring it back to council for deliberations or motion. Amy.
I just wonder, it's probably such a small amount, it may not be worth it, but I wonder if we allocate 3 million just to the deed restricted program. And then once staff gets the amount from the housing authority, Kim comes back with a second supplemental for that amount. I mean, it may just be a small amount, may not be worth it, but that this has come up several times tonight. So I wonder if we want to look at that.
I would support that as an understanding that the 3 million would go to the pilot program. Once we understand what it takes to implement this, then we can allocate more funds from to pay for that. I kind of want to see what it's going to cost before we take it out of the 3 million.
I suggest just leaving it the way it is and moving on with it.
You can always allocate.
And, you know, we're going to be back allocating more money towards a permanent program.
For me, it's like, let's move forward today, and then on the 17th, we should know what that number, my expectation is we're going to have that number on the 17th, and we can make modifications then.
Amy?
Okay, and we do a second reading
Yeah.
of the supplemental. So, okay, so you're suggesting we wait.
We'll wait till you think they'll have
17th.
the cost estimate by the 17th, Brad?
That's the commitment from the Housing Authority, yes.
Okay. All right.
Move to approve agenda item 9.
Second.
Motion by Counselor Pacino, second by Counselor Swintek. All those in favor of approving agenda item 9?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, motion passes 7-0. Thank you,
Thanks, guys.
Kim, Brad, and Gates,
Thank you.
for all your hard work
Appreciate it.
on this. All right, we're going to go to number 10, which is a second reading of an ordinance revising section 5-3 of the Steamboat Springs Revised Municipal Code and the International Building Code Appendix J relating to grading permits.
Good evening, Council. John Snyder, Public Works Director. This ordinance would revise the International Building Code in relation to grading permits, also known as grade and fill permits. The primary purpose really was to reorganize the language for improved clarity. And then there was some wordsmithing, like removing double negatives, awkward phrasing, things of that nature. The only change of substance was that previously permits were not required if the slope was less steep than 2 to 1. In this context, meaning 2 units horizontally to 1 vertically. This would change it to 3 to 1. So a less steep slope would require a grading permit. And that is in response to some slope failures that we've seen in recent years due to insufficient engineering on that. But that's the only material change. The rest is really meant to just improve clarity on what we're already doing. No presentation, but any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Anyone have a question for John?
Thank you. Makes sense.
Okay. Let's open it up to public comment. Is there anybody in the room or online who would like to make a public comment? Seeing none, we'll bring it back to council for a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion from Councilor Swintek, second by Councilor Pacino. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Thanks, Amy. Motion passes 7-0. Okay, we have no commission reports, so we'll go to the city's attorney's report around the Business Improvement District.
Thank you. Yes, this is an update that is coming back to you after some comments from Lisa Popovich last month regarding the Business Improvement District. And you did have a brief discussion about maybe scheduling a work session, but I wanted to give you a little bit of information for context. So the bid was formed in 2007 and was active for about 11 years. And in that time period, they made 3 runs at passing a tax and or an assessment to provide some revenue. And none of those efforts were successful. And so there hasn't been any activity with the bid since 2018, and their board terms all expired, as far as I can tell, in 2019. So the bid still exists, but it's dormant. If there was a desire to bring it back to life, what you would need to do is to appoint a new board. And I think we'd want to talk to Lisa and others about who would be on that board. If the board were to be resuscitated, then on an annual basis, you would also need to review and approve an operating plan, much in the same way as you do for the LMD. So the amount of time for council is not, it's not a big commitment if you want to go down that road. And that's what it would take. So that's what I have for you tonight, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
You mentioned we can put this on a work session and go a little deeper, or do we need to?
That's up to this council to decide. I mean, Lisa's wants to resuscitate the bid. And the reason is they would like to get it back in force and get some taxation and do some things in the downtown area.
Yeah, I think there's definitely some value in having a work session on it to go understanding the ramifications. I got on council in 2019, so I'm very unfamiliar with the whole program. And since it's been disbanded, I'm like, it's hard for me to make a decision moving forward without having a little work session about it. That's all.
I'm not familiar with this either, so I
Okay.
need a session to understand it.
I agree.
Okay, thumbs up on a work session? Amy, go ahead, Councilor Dixon.
So I was not on council either, but I definitely remember the work that went around this and the different tax questions that the businesses downtown voted against. And I think, Dan, was that 3 times? Is that what your report says?
2007, 2014, and 2018.
Yeah.
And I don't have any details of what the election results are because we didn't run those, but those are the dates in their operating plans.
Yeah. So, I mean, this is specific to the downtown area. I think we would need, I mean, if we want to do a work session, fine. We have not heard from any businesses saying they want this to be restarted or whatever the right word is. And those tax questions failed 3 times, the last one in 20, whatever Dan said, 19. So there clearly was not support from the downtown businesses. But if we want to do a work session, so be it. But just caution, we have not heard from one business that they want this. We heard from one person.
Well, it's the same context of the chamber, wanting to do some kind of a, we taxed them, or we tasked them many times with trying to find a funding mechanism that would help prop up the chamber as opposed to coming in to a general fund each time. I don't know for sure you were at the meeting, Steve, but if Lisa was saying, hey, listen, we know that she's running her Main Street Steamboat on a shoestring budget, and she gets a nominal amount of money from the city council every year, and that's not enough to do what she would like to do. To me, it's kind of in that same vein as she, as running Main Street Steamboat, presents it like, hey, we'd like to find some of their mechanism that we can have ongoing support for the business district. If that's the vein of her conversation, why we have this work session, I'm all for it. Because it's worth investigating. So, if they want to tax themselves for this improvement, go for it. We just need to be the ones that kind of allow that to happen. At least the conversation is.
Well, the other way we could go about this, instead of scheduling it on a work session, is I would be glad to talk to Lisa and find out the level of support in downtown for this before we move forward and potentially waste time
Okay.
on this. So I will bring that back to us at a future council meeting shortly.
As you define, and then if something happens, just put it on a work session. If it doesn't, then don't worry about it. It's your call, Steve. You're president.
Okay. Any other thoughts on this one? I will get back to everybody on that. That brings us to our last item on here, and Julie has been very busy.
Woo!
So we have minutes from December 9th, 16th, January 6th, January 13th. Has everybody looked through those minutes, and are there any comments, corrections, revisions?
Great.
If not, I will take a motion to approve those minutes.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, motion from Councilor Gary, second by Councilor Barnes. All those in favor of approving those minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion passes 7-0. Is there any other business we need to talk about tonight? Hearing none, motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned.
I feel better, Amy.